Intro I use currency. Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting adventure. Today, Audio Novel presents, So If I Have a Wolverine Template, by Ninja King 3834. If you're looking for more amazing stories, don't forget to check out my Patreon page. Your support helps turn incredible tales like this one into fully immersive audiobooks. Join me on this journey, and together, we can bring more stories to life. Thank you for being part of the adventure. Let's begin. Elden Ring decks within Yu-Gi-Oh! Chapter 31, Side Chapter 2, The Hyena Laughs at the Dogs. Third-person POV. You know, being dropped into a fully unknown world with little to no knowledge about the world around them. But for a resourceful character to like Patches, it's just like a big fish transferring from the lake to the ocean. The only problem is that this ocean is extra salty in comparison to his past oceans, so the taste is extra bitter. He can smell it on the wind that this world is run on the concept of greed, be it greed for wealth or greed for power. For a world where there are those blinded by greed, it needs people of greater purposes like Patches to fix the world. Usually with a swift kick from a cliff, but since this world seems to lack natural vertical landscapes, he knows he will have to adapt. To be honest, Patches using the pilfered deck from the Rare Hunter Scar was just having a bash and brawl, though the back alleys beating Rare Hunters left and right. He's so effective that he's already at 6 crystal map cards, which the info dump he got told him were used for the tournament. Now you might be curious how the sneaky bastard was able to do this so quickly, or in any case hunt down so many rare hunters so quickly. Simple, a rat knows where rats hide, and since he got the info dump of all the rules, his knowledge of the game is ironclad like his great shield. It also helps that he figured out he could get the Dark Scorpions to cheat by just phasing though the opponent's deck before telling him their hands and next draws. Knowledge is power, and power in the hand of malicious bastard is a recipe for trouble, so he exploded both the rules and the spirits to just curb stomp the rare hunters into the ground. Patches the ever vigilant also got some information from the rare hunters he beat and figured something was going on at the docks, so he goes towards their, but on the way he finds an interesting sight. He sees a brown spike-headed teen running frantically with a girl with eyes wrapped in bandages. The most interesting part of the situation is that they're being chased by a trio of rare hunters. Now Patches is many things. He's a manipulative bastard, he's a cheapskate and would sell someone out if the deal was good enough. You could call him diabolical or malicious, but even he has morals. One of those is that he repays his debts and is willing to turn over a new leaf in a pinch, but another one is that he doesn't go out of his way to target the helpless even if it would be easy. So, the sight of 3 grown adults hunting a teen and a blind girl makes him angry, and an angry Patches isn't a good scenario of many parties. Patches follows the chase and catches up to them as the rare hunters do a pincer maneuver, as one of them is able to take a shortcut and cut of their escape route in a tunnel. He followed that individual, so he's behind the blocking rare hunter. He watches as the 3 confront the pair and intimidate them. The biggest twist to Patches is that some spiky-haired teen with a headband walks right by him and throws some dice at the rare hunters. He's surprised that actually stopped their advance and made an opening where the pair escape the tunnel towards where the headband-wearing teen is, and they all start to run past Patches, who's at the tunnel entrance. Tisk, TSK, here I am about to stick my neck out for some snot-nosed brats, and then another snot-nosed brat steals my thunder. It's just unfair, I say. My words catch the running trio and cause confused faces to them to appear. They turn around and bear witness to the techniques of a man who survived and thrived during uncountable apocalypse-level scenarios, as he's able to beat up each of the rare hunters with just his fists and some cheeky kicks between the legs. Tristan and Duke are just standing there with their jaws agape, as this bald dude beats them up. After Patches leaves the rare hunters in a pile of painful body parts, he turns to the trio and introduces himself. Hello there, I saw you were in a spot of trouble. Now I'm not one for sticking my nose into others' business, but a respectable businessman like me has standards, and it would break my heart if was to watch a blind damsel be taken advantage of like that. Tristan with a weary look at Patches, thanks, that's for both of you. We were in trouble, and while I could have taken them on, I couldn't while keeping Serenity safe. At his words, Serenity nods and says a quiet, thanks you too, and you Tristan for keeping me safe, but I don't recognize your voices, so who are you? Before Patches can speak, Duke speaks up and introduces himself to the girl. Patches can easily tell he's gained a crush for her, but he just rolls his eyes. Love is meaningless for someone like him, gets in the way he thinks. Well, my dear, you can call me Trusty Patches. I'm a dashing rogue who simply knows his way around the business end of street brawl. If you find anything interesting, give me a shout and I'll come running. Patches turns away from the trio before going back towards the rare hunter's mound. This confuses the trio and Duke asks, what are you doing? With a confident smirk, Patches looks over his shoulder at the trio of teens. Looting some treasure obviously, they're called rare hunters for a reason, the cards they have on them are valuable. So, I'm just taking my fair due. The trio of teens look at the rogue in curiosity before having a conversation amongst themselves. By the time Patches is done, he comes out of the tunnel to them, realizing that the rare hunters are after their friends probably. Tristan looks at Patches. Hey Patches, you called these guys rare hunters before, would you happen to know where their base is? Patches, with a smirk that senses an opportunity, says, well, I have some experience with the criminal underworld and some hints that could be useful, but I was gonna check it out myself, but I could use some extra eyes while I case the scene. Either they were too focused on him knowing the possible location or too worried about their friends they didn't catch his slip-up. But Duke simply asks, where's the base then, and Patches responds with, the docks. The four of them make their way there, it's more the trio are going there, and Patches follow them since he's still new to the city. It doesn't take long, but Patches wasn't expecting to see a suicide pact in the process. The trio charge at the scene and start screaming names, but sensing a sticky situation, Patches keeps the shadows and listens in. Luckily, a small kid fills in the trio with the situation, and Patches grins at coming up with a plan. Everyone starts to focus on both the duel and trying to snap the taller kid from some mind control. So, while everyone's distracted, Patches does what he does best and skulks around, specifically to the opposite side of a mechanical crane they have, threatening a dame locked in a chair. Knowing how this song and dance goes, he sneaks up to the machine all rogue-like. When the guy in the crane gets out of the cabin, his focus is on everyone else and doesn't notice Patches squatting on the canopy of the crane just above him. The looks on everyone's face at the appearance of Patches is funny to him, but the guy must be a narcissist because they somehow don't give Patches away. Patches watched the duel and waits for the perfect time when it seems the brainwashing was resisted by the blonde teen. Taking that as his cue, Patches jumps from the canopy of the crane to drop kick the grunt. The drop kick sends the grunt sprawling and sending the device flying away, so he can't trigger the crane. Seeing no reason not to, Patches just starts wailing on the nameless grunt until he's unconscious. The sight of the violence must have stunned the teens into silence, but for Patches, he simply walks to the dame, presses some obvious buttons, and she's now free. Patches just smirks at the kids before going to turn around and leave since he's done his good deeds for the day. But as he starts walking away, he hears the sound of something heavy entering the water. He looks back to see the hanging anchor which was between the pair of teens has gone underwater. He now sees the blind girl, no longer blinded by her raps, be the only one to jump into the water to save them. Slightly grumbling about how he always has to do everything, Patches turns around and runs at the water before diving into the sea. He finds within the water the tall blonde teen tugging at his chain fruitlessly while the girl dives down to get him. He swims to them, and when he gets to the pair, the blonde's unconscious and the girl is having trouble carry him up, so Patches gets under the lad and takes most of the weight so the three of them can surface. When they're free of the water, the girl starts breathing, but Patches notices the lad isn't. He swims the pair to the dock where the brown-haired teen lifts the blonde from the water. The girl and Patches get out of the water, but as expected of teenagers, they have no idea how to save a drowned person. They simply laid the teen on his back before fussing over him. Patches rolls his eyes before pushing past the lot and flipping the teen onto his side before pumping the blonde teen's chest from above in a rhythm to let his body expel the water. After a few compressions, the teen's airways clears with a gasp and he starts to groan while water leaks from his mouth. Patches keeps at it until the amount of water is little. At that point, he looks around at everyone before indicating to make some room. They do a small shuffle to make some room before Patches rolls the teen onto his other side and repeats the process again. Once the water stops, Patches stops the compressions before laying the teen on his back with his breathing regular. Patches wipes the sweat on his brow from the exertion and hears the groaning of the teen waking up. With a smile and smirk, Patches watches the teen wake up, and the first thing Joey sees after nearly drowning is Patches' big nose in his face. Welcome back amongst the living sunshine. The weather is great, I would say perfect weather for a dip in the ocean and all, but don't bring the anchor next time, okay? The look on Joey's face is a mix between bewilderment and shock, since he has no idea who this guy is and why does he think he can make jokes about his near death. Oh, I know the look on that face. Were you expecting to be revived from death's grasp by a beautiful nurse or graying doctor? Well, sorry chum, the world isn't that perfect. None of your associates knew better, so I had to step in. Oh, by the way, you owe me a debt in the future. Joey just lays on the dock and looks around to see the worried faces of his friends and the stern face of Sito Kaiba. Well, anyway, you lot seem to have this all in hand, so I'll take my departure and let you lot catch up. Just remember, if you ever need a deviously handsome rogue, think of me trusty Patches, I'll find you if I'm free. Patches like a squall simply gets up and starts walking along the docks, going towards some warehouses that are prime locations to find some merchandise. The last thing Patches hears from the group is the small spiky-haired kid saying, "Who the hell was that guy?" Chapter 32, Chapter 30 Spoilers. After pulling the slip on Pegasus, I still wander around Kaiba Corp since the sun is still out. I gain an evil idea and start to exit the building before going to the Kaiba Corp's private airport. Now you might not believe they would have a private airport, but Kaiba Corp was previously a weapons manufacturer with a lot of logistics needed, so to facilitate those logistics they have their own airport strip. Now I use my current access to hitch a ride on the still docked blimp to beat having to wait in a dark and dusty stadium for the tournament to reach the next stage. Not a minute too soon, since the blimp ascends into the sky just after I get on it, sensing the perfect opportunity, one quickly run though the ship and quickly go to change my clothes to a pilot's outfit with a captain's hat to finish the outfit. It turns out if I want to change my clothes, my trench coat can morph into what I want if I have it in front of me. I do so and now look like a pilot. I travel back though the blimp to the entryway and wait for the blimp to arrive at the stadium at the intended time. Time takes its sweet time, but I fill the gap by having a conversation with the grumpiest person in the land between. I honestly had no idea what you were thinking. I know you treated the Erd Tree like your parent, but you really did nothing important besides be a bulwark for the weakest demigod. You could have just taken the great rune of magnetism in the first place. With a scowl on his face, Morgott replies, "At some point I did have that though, but if I did, the multitude of Tarnished would have become unpredictable. They would do things that would have caused damage to the whole lands between instead of said damage being concentrated on a single highly defendable castle. Maybe, but if you remember, a normal Tarnished couldn't enter Leyndell until they had a pair of the great runes. If you took Godric's rune, it would have forced a paradigm shift. It would have forced the Tarnished to go for the 3 other great runes on offer, which would have been impossible if multiple people went for them." He squints his eyes in curiosity. Explain. I scowl as well before counting down with some fingers to emphasize. The 3 runes left would have been Renana's, Rykard's, or Rodon's rune. I'll explain in that order. Raya Lucaria was magically locked with a glintstone key which is soul-bound. There was only one available key in the land between being guarded by a glintstone dragon. Once the key was taken, no other Tarnished would get into Raya Lucaria. Rykard was being protected by Volcano Manor, which can only be accessed normally via Altus Plateau while possible to get to due to a mining tunnel. It would make them have to pass through 2 obvious checkpoint locations. If you stationed your Knights Cavalry at those locations on a rotation with some Erd Tree Sentinels, then there would be no way for a Tarnished to get past. Rodon is in Caelid. Caelid is a hellscape, so they would have had to contend with mutated wildlife, scarlet rot, dragons from the Dragon Barrow, and Rodon's knights in a heavily fortified castle with a single path of assault. Then this is all before having to fight Rodon head-on. And lastly, if you took Godric's rune without anyone noticing, the Tarnished would have gone to assault Stormvale Castle pointlessly without you needing to do anything. You might have not known this, but if the site of grace the Tarnished have is static pointing only at the big castles, if the Great Rune is taken, the lines of grace remain, so they don't track the Great Rune just where it was once the shattering became a stalemate. With each argument the face of Morgott flinches at the realization he wasted so much effort for no point. There was really only 2 ways into Leyndell. Taking Godric's rune, you blocked the easier of the pair. This causes Morgott to look at me with his eye in confusion. What do you mean, there shouldn't be a way into Leyndell? One of the first thing I did during the shattering was to break the warp gates into Leyndell. The only one I left was the one connected to the fortified manor, which I kept unusable as a passage if not approaching from within Leyndell. I smirk. Well, you missed one, but you didn't need to worry about that entrance since it was guarded behind Fortisax, who was at that point infused with Deathblight, making its breath into a form of Deathblight mist and its lightning being infused with Deathblight. This causes all of the demigods to actually flinch at the idea of an ancient dragon with those capabilities, but the one most affected is Godwin, who's crying with a grand smile. I turn the demigod, and he wipes his eyes. I was hoping my friend wouldn't have died, but being like that was torture, and that was for someone bound by time. For a timeless dragon like him, it should have been endless agony. I close my eyes and think for a second. Miquella, can you get Fortisax from the Maelstrom? Miquella looks at me, then his brother. The dragons aren't being very cooperative. Ixyx was a hassle, but maybe he might be an exception to that rule. Miquella fade in form, and after a few moments of silence, the sound of striking lightning is heard, though the whole ship starts to shake as more thunderous booms are heard around the blimp. As I start to feel like the blimp might actually be affected by the lightning strikes, a black glowing mass of energy emerges from my body. it forms scaled claws before clawing itself out of me like a xenomorph. Once fully out it turns around and me and demigods all see a man-sized black dragon whose form is covered in black brambles which have pierced its black scales. The dragon stares at the group but he focuses on a certain individual and before the demigods react it lunges at the form of the mermaid demigod. Everyone watches as the dragon goes to attack Godwin. They even see the expression on Godwin's face which is a mix of happiness at seeing his old friend and acceptance at whatever the dragon would do to him, so he doesn't resist. The dragon grabs the mermaid demigod with both of his claws and holds the demigods to his face. Everyone is silent and doesn't move in the thought that the dragon has Godwin in a hostage situation. But the dragon doesn't care about the others, he lets out a grand roar into the face of Godwin stunning everyone, Godwin the most due to his proximity. Once everyone recovers from the stun, they're stunned again at the sight before them. Fortisax's form is now coiled around the form of Godwin supporting him so he's now at standing height instead of laying on the side, it akin to a hug but more supportive. Godwin is the most shocked as he looks to the side and sees the eye of Fortisax and realizes something. You should have just left me to rot, my friend. I am not worth of all the pain and torment you took on for my sake when I was already dead, and now after all that time alone and in pain you don't even have a mote of rage against me. The dragon doesn't make a noise, but Godwin can tell his old friend's thoughts with just a look. I see, my friend. I am not worthy of your friendship, but I am filled with joy at getting to fight by your side again even if we're both in such different forms. Let's never separate again since even death itself can't keep us apart any longer. The dragon simply lets off a low growl in agreement. The demigods are silent at the reunited pair but the whole blimp shakes as it lands in the stadium. I sort out my tie and get ready for some fun. Chapter 30, Reuniting the Interspecies Best Friends. Chapter 33, Chapter 31 I dub thee the Hindenburg. I hide and wait for the blimp to let the gangplank down, when it does I drop the perception barrier and stand in front of the entrance. Once it's fully down I see the full cast for the finals and one of them is shocked at my appearance but the pair of guards who are flanking the stairs speaks unaware of my presence since they're facing the wrong way. In a stern voice guard 1 speaks, will depart once the 8th duelist arrives. In a German accent I speak, yes, while we wait for them come join us on the SS Hindenburg. Everyone is gaping like goldfish but Kaiba is just scowling at my appearance. I start waking down, and speaking, I'll be your captain this evening, I have no plane flying license but you don't need one for a blimp. I smirk at the lot and everyone is looking at the Kaiba pair for clarification. Sito is grumpy and Makuba's face is full of dread, before realizing something and tries to stop his brother but. You're definitely not the pilot, I don't remember hiring a clown for a pilot. Sito speaks, Makuba pauses for a second before sighing. I take on a confused face and speak, well I remember signing a contract with one Kaiba brother which had a clause I was to be employed as any non-essential personnel such as a co-pilot and if I was rejected from my chosen position I would be placed as head of public relations. I take out the contract Makuba signed and a magnifying glass which had a clause. Kaiba is shocked for a second before scowling, that's not legally binding, I never signed that. Oh yes you did, you signed it electronically earlier today, here's your signature and everything. I move the magnifying glass to the signature which simply reads, Sito Kaiba, but in a cursive font. With his signature in full view his eyes sharpen and turns towards his little brother who at this point has ran onto the ship to hide, he passes beside me and runs into the blimp with haste. Kaiba starts to stare daggers at me, okay, you're fired then. I shrug before moving the magnifying glass which makes it so the contract can't be broken or changed for the next 2 months, so he can't fire me unless I want to leave willingly. The look on his face is priceless. I though ahead, don't worry I won't do anything harmful, this was a transaction and Makuba get the better part of the deal in my opinion. I roll up the contract and place into my coat pocket before taking out 6 security cards for the blimp and fan them to the group. Now as the acting head of public relations I would like to announce that I'm hyping this tournament up, instead of 8 duelists the finals will have 16 contestants. My words cause Kaiba to look at me in shock and annoyance at me messing with his tournament, while everyone else is in shock I whisper to him. I've sorted out all the logistics already, nothing will really change besides taking a bit longer, it just means you have more time to plan to take the god cards. I return to the ground before letting the group walk into the blimp, when each of them pass me they each give me a look which I just reply with a smile. Once they're all on, I wait for the remaining duelists to arrive with the guards. The next person to arrive is Ishizu wearing a cloth veil to hide her appearance but is obvious it's her. Hello miss, please present your locator cards for inspection with one of my associates. I indicate with the guard. Not recognizing me, she just nods and goes to the guard, who hands over the last normal blimp pass, letting her on the blimp. It doesn't take long, but I hear the sound of a rushing female duelist enters into the arena. It's Guinevere with a flush face from exertion. I just look at her and laugh as well as grin. Let me guess, you were on the other side of town when you activated the locator cards to find out that it was here. She just staggers over to me and simply says, "Drop the grin or I'll drop it for you." Well, anyway, you're lucky. If I didn't literally change the rules like 10 minuets ago, you would have been barred from the finals. Now show your locator cards to the guards and get on. She does that and I spot the next person to arrive. It's another female duelist, being Rebecca Hawkins. She's less breathless, but I can tell she had to run while lugging her dual disc. Hello Rebecca, just show your locator cards to the guard and you're in the tournament. This situation repeats as 3 more duelists arrive to join the lot. I flinch since I recognize one of them as that Golden Castle of Stromberg kid, so that's why he wasn't in the finals, he was just late. With only one pass left, I look to the bleachers of the arena and say, "You can come out now, this is the last one, mate." Stepping out of the shadows like a ghost is Patches with his distinctive smirk, which I mirror on my own face. He walks past me and I just hand him the last one before turning around and going towards the blimp. Once of the guards addresses Patches to get his locator cards he probably stole, which I don't care about. The other guard comes to me and addresses me. Sir. Aren't we waiting for the 15th and 16th duelists to arrive?" I smile and whisper into his ear. I lean back after telling him, "Don't tell anyone, it'll be our little secret. Don't tell the Kaiba siblings and I'll give you a bonus on your next paycheck." "I see, sir, that makes sense, let's set off." I walk next to Patches and wrap my arm around his shoulder and he does the same. The pair of trolls walk into the blimp and written on the side of the entrance compartment in bold red paint reads, "Welcome to the Hindenburg, no crashes since 1938. Chapter 34, Chapter 32, Unexpected Arrivals." With everyone now on the blimp, it starts to take off and both me and Patches make our way through the blimp. While chuckling at each other, we find the main hall with a ball selecting machine and we both look at each other with malicious grins. While the room is unattended, we both approach the device and make some modifications to the machine and balls, mainly adding 8 more balls to the machine while making the balls funnier. With our work done, we nod to each other and depart towards the most sound to find a viewing area to look down at Domino City. The main cast is here, and my arrival is at the same time Kaiba leaves the compartment from another entrance, probably looking for his brother. My appearance with Patches catches most of the people out, but our identical grins make most of them realize we're related in some way. I look at the group and reconnect names and faces since I have only met Yugi at this point, but by our approach, they all look at me and Patches weirdly. Patches is the first one to speak. "What's with all the glum faces, kids? It's like you saw a ghost." He turns to face me. Maybe it's the sight of my pal's ugly mug. I know not everyone can have such great look like me, but it's not something to gawk at. As he says this, he rubs his bald dome. I look at him with my eye twitching in annoyance. Joey is the first to speak, mainly since he's the most assertive of the bunch. "You should look at yourself in the mirror, but your pal is the biggest mystery, mainly at how he can easily trick Kaiba." I look at the Gambler King and just shrug. I just did one of Patches' techniques against Sito, just strike while they were already distracted. He's so focused on the god cards that it was simple to use his greed against him. At the end of that, Patches just nods at the acceptance at using his tactics to catch the big fish. He mock wipes his eyes and says, "You make me so proud." Well, you learn something when having 5 impactful lessons really kicks you into gear to learn the trade. In my words, the inside joke causes both me and Patches to laugh, which disturbs the group. After me and Patches stop laughing, a brown-haired girl with long hair approaches Patches and speaks to him. Your name is Patches, right?" Patches, looking mock offended, says, "It's Trusty Patches, my dear. Throughout my career I've never betrayed a promise, so I like to keep the title." The girl, who I am realizing is Serenity, holds Patches' hand and says, "Thank you for saving my brother. We didn't know what to do, then you just brought him back. Thank you." I look at Patches since it seems he's already had a run-in with the cast before and even saved Joey in some way. I then remember the anchor duel and just shrug. I wrap my hand around Patches' back to rest on his shoulder and speak, "Oh, Trusty Patches the hero, isn't that an oxymoron?" Patches look at me with a sneer, "And what's that meant to imply, chum?" "Oh, it's just we both know you're a moron and can be as stubborn as an ox when you want to be." This causes Patches to squint at me. "You have no proof." I simply say 3 words with a smug smile on my face, "Grey rat, Onion Knight. He looks at me and laughs. I laugh with him before using his free hand to sucker punch me in the gut. At the impact I feel something get shaken loose and start to feel sick. I take a step back and caress my stomach from the wheeziness. Everyone looks confused at my actions, but in the distance, I see a trash can, so I run for it since I feel really sick. I rush to it and start to vomit into the trash can, but I don't feel any vomit but instead some sort of spiritual energy. It feels both burning hot and spicy as it exits my mouth. After my expulsion of spiritual energy, remaining visible in the trash can are 4 cards, 4 very unnatural cards which I never thought would appear even with the Elden Ring cards I can make. The Fire Keeper Fire, Saint/Effect, ATK, 0/Def, 0. The Ashen 1 Fire, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 2400/Def, 2000. Choice of the First Flame, Trap. The Lord of Cinders Fire, God, Fusion, Effect, ATK/Def, 2500. The sight of these cards makes me both happy and confused since these aren't Elden Ring cards, they're Dark Souls cards, all from the 3rd installment. I reach into the trash can and go to grab the cards, but as I touch them, I feel my hands start to burn. Ouch, my words cause a lot of people to focus on me more than they were already. I look at my fingers to see it's not really damaged, but I can feel a light fading burning sensation on my fingertips. It fades quickly. I look at the cards and watch as they move on their own and lay out in a triangle formation in the trash can. Fusion on top, Trap in the middle, then the pair of destined partners to form the bottom corner of the triangle. Within the trash, a line of embers writes under the formation in cursive words which I can't read. Yo Patches, can you read this? My words cause him to break from his revelry at my misfortune before coming over and looking into the trash can. Well damn, I didn't know you could get those lot, I reply with a spooked look. I didn't either, but anyway, can you read this script? Patches looks at it and reads it. Yup, it's Lothric script. It reads, only those with a will unbreakable and eyes who can look to the future unburdened may harness the flame's last embers. Once he reads it, he tries to grab one of the cards and gets a similar reaction. Ouch. I snicker at him and his misfortune. Unbreakable. Patches my arse, remember your need for fixing in the Ringed City so you're not applicable. Well bugger, at this point we notice that was now surrounded by the rest of the main cast. Tristan looks at us with a curious look. What's got you so worked up? Was his vomit that interesting that you needed to touch it? I speak, well, my situation is very special, and it appears Patches caused something that wasn't meant to happen. Miquella, tell me, what the hell happened here? When the marauder friend of yours punched you, it dislodged a clot that was in the maelstrom. It was like a cancer growth in the maelstrom. It was malignant, alive off the spirit energy but wasn't doing anything, so I left it. You essentially just spat the clot out and it manifested as those cards. I just shrug. Well, it turns out we have a sword in the stone situation here. Some of you might be interested in it due to the fusion. I step away and Patches follows me. Joey, being the most curious, sticks his head in and screams as he reads it. Hey Yug, it's a fudging god card in here. Without caution or remembering how me and Patches both burned ourselves, he reaches into the trash can and goes for the card. Ouch, his hand returns out of the trash can, and he puts it to his lips, nursing his finger. It burned me. I nudge Patches. Makes sense for a Lord of Cinders. Patches smirks at me and we just watch them interact with the cards. The next person to try is Yugi, who reaches into it. For some reason he doesn't make a sound, but when his hand returns it's empty. The next person is Bakura, who is being possessed by the thief. He reaches in and gets a burnt hand. Everyone is confused at this since the only duelists of the group have failed, but Duke, feeling cocky, tries to get the card, but his hand burns. The next person is Tristan, who shrugs before going for it, for the same result. Watching everyone who was willing to try and fail, I came up with a thought and looked at a specific person. I then point at Serenity. You try it, I have a theory. This causes everyone to look at me and Serenity. Serenity looks at me and then at the trash can, and I notice something in her eyes. She's drawn to them for some reason. Then Joey reacts, not pleased at my suggestion. Why Serenity? She's not even a duelist and she's not forced to if she doesn't want to. I look at Joey. Have a little faith. Also, it's not like the heat is permanent. If she touches and nothing happens, nothing happens. You should ease up a little, friend. Serenity steps up to the trash can and reaches into it. She doesn't make a sound, but when her hand is pulled out containing 4 cards within her grasp. Interesting, very interesting. You can keep them, but know they have a life of their own, so if you feel something from them, don't just dismiss it as a flight of fancy. I start to walk away towards the innards of the blimp, but Patches remain with the group. With a look of confusion, Serenity turns towards Patches and asks, "What are these cards? Why is everyone looking at me like I'm strange, and why do I feel a gentle warmth from these cards?" Patches sighs before reaching towards her and holding a lock of her hair so she can see. It's smoldering like lit ashes at the tips. Within your hands is a god card for a world that's been burned to just ashes via decay and renewal of a great flame. The whole point of this tournament is for the winner to get 3 of such god cards, and you just got 1 for semi-free without effort. She looks at Patches with eyes that now have a tint of red and blue with them. "How do you know that?" Patches just smirks. "I'm just well-traveled, my dear. I know many things that would curl your toes if I told you about them, but that's a tale for story time later." Same as me, he starts to swagger out of the room. His departure signals for the group to make for their rooms to prepare for the finals. Within the Wheeler room, the pair of siblings are talking mainly about how amazing the room and view are, but after a while, Joey is preparing in the chair, thinking as unusual as it is for the finals and what they entail when he hears his sister speak. "Joey, you know these cards that the pilot guy gave me? Are they good?" This causes Joey to look at his sister, who presents the cards to him. He looks at them and nods. "Well, yeah, this blindfolded chick can't be destroyed and acts as a draw machine. This night guy hits like a rolling boulder, picking up momentum with the more he hits. Then this fusion god card is just sheer force in card form." She hears her brother's words and looks at them, then with eyes full of determination, she hands them to her brother. "You can use them since I'm not a duelist yet." Joey looks at his sister and sees her determination and goes to touch the cards, but is hesitant since they're his sister's cards and he was just burned recently for touching them. But he musters his courage before taking the cards. He feels a warmth on his hands from their touch, but it's now akin to his hands being heated by a close bonfire instead of in the flames as before. At this point, Joey's friends start to invade the room and make a mess of it and order room service, distracting Joey from the new cards. After a while, an intercom announcement is heard throughout the blimp to amass the contestants in the main room. As they all exit the room, Serenity feels something within the room, and standing in the middle is hazy figure of a woman with pale golden hair with a silver crown which covers her eyes. She hears as if whispers on the wind the woman's voice, "Us embers will follow your will, but we will await the day you grasp the remnants of the first flame yourself with great anticipation." Confused at her words, Serenity watches as the woman fades away like turning to dust before disappearing. Serenity closes her eyes and goes to catch up with her brother and his friends. Chapter 35, Chapter 33 Placement Prank. The contestants all gather in the main room besides Ishizu, who can see the previous future and doesn't realize she needs to be here, her loss anyway. Everyone is partaking in the buffet of the main room, though Joey's partaking alone is worth 3 normal people. After a while of letting the duelists mingle and stuff their faces, a light show occurs and brings attention to a device that's at the main point of the room. One of the black-glassed guards arrive and stand with the device to their back. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to determine the distribution of the finalists. Behind me, this machine will produce a ball with a number corresponding with the number on your key card. When the pair of duelists have been chosen, they will duel, and once their duel is over, we will return to this room to determine the next duel fixing." He lets the duelists look at the device, which looks like a bingo machine. It has a fogged glass case which the balls are vaguely see them though. The bottom of the device is blue eyes themed with a pair of spouts for the balls to be dispensed. The guard produces a remote and presses a button on it. This causes the balls in the device to start to dance on the jets of air. The machine lights up the interior of the glass ball to show the dancing ball's shadows before one is seen entering a tube in the center of the device. A few seconds later, the ball is produced from one of the dragon head spouts and the guard walks up to the machine and grabs the ball. He looks at it with confusion before revealing it to the duelists. The ball that was expected to contain a number instead is actually a transparent sphere with a 2D image of a blank human head, which depending on the light is being encroached by markings from the right side of the face. Both me and Patches start to chuckle. Unluckily, I was near Sito and he heard my chuckles. "You messed with the balls, didn't you?" he says in an aggravated tone. I just simply nod and say, "There were only 8 balls, so I just replaced them with 16 better ones, with each representing the duel list instead of just a number." Sito closes his eyes in annoyance, but he doesn't do anything since it's not really anything major. He looks at the guards, who recenters himself before looking at the image sphere, before looking at Merrick, Odeon, and throwing the ball at him. He catches it and nods. The machine behind the guard activates again, and from the other dragon head spout pops out the second sphere. The guard goes to check it and looks at it before presenting it to the duelists. Inside the sphere is the 2D image of a quartet of wings in the form of a heart. One pair are red while another is holographic, which fades and appears depending on the light. The guard seems stumped at this one since it's not as easy as Merrick's, Odeon's. He looks at me and giving him a bone I look towards the duel list. He catches on and locks on that duel list. He throws the ball and it's caught in the hand of a blonde-haired and purple jacket-wearing self-made woman. My Valentine catches her sphere in light confusion, but she looks at the sphere in curiosity before nodding and going towards the duel arena. The guards around the room usher the pair to their respective elevators, and because I don't want to stand outside on a blimp, I'll watch the duel on the screens in the banquet hall with most of the duelists. Unsurprisingly, the main cast go to support their friend. While everyone anticipates the start of the finals, I sneakily find the guard who was operating the machine before handing him a sheet of paper with each sphere design and their intended duelists. He looks at me at confusion and then relief, since I can tell if he messed up any of the spheres Sito would probably kick him from employment, then the blimp, in that order. Now I would say Sito would give the guy a parachute, but it's the principle of the matter. Nearby I spot Patches, who's inhaling fancy food without caring for the looks other give him for his actions. I guess he appreciate being in a world where he has an appetite, especially when there's so much fancy food around, so being the pal I am, I bring a full plate when his own is near empty. He looks at me with a smirk before taking the plate. While he does that, the screens around us announce that the first finals duel will now begin. The screens change to depict the top of the blimp showing Mai on one side and Merrick, Odeon, on the other of a oval platform with markings for the duel. They activate their duel disc illuminating the field before drawing their first hands to start the finals. Merrick's LP, 4000. Mai's LP, 4000. Chapter 36, Chapter 34, Bird Cage. The duel starts with Odeon's draw. His impassive face looks at his hand before placing a pair of cards face down in his spell/trap zones and placing a face-down monster on the field before ending his turn in silence. Undeterred, Mai draws her card before eyeing the field, then her hand. I don't like the feeling I get from those face-downs. She takes a card and places it on the field in her spell/trap zone before summoning her own monster, but in this case does not face down. I summon my Amazonas trainee, and I'll have her take out your face-down monster. The card appears on the field, and at the edge of the card a grapple is seen before a gray-haired woman in exotic cloth climbs out of the card onto the field. She quickly swings her grappling hook and chain at the face-down monster. Amazonas trainee Earth, warrior/effect, ATK, 1500/def, 1300. The female warrior's hook strikes into the back of the face-down card with the chain becoming taut. She pulls, and the card is flipped over to reveal what seems to be a zombie camel. Deslocuta Earth, zombie/effect, ATK, 500/def, 600. Odeon ever passive speaks directly. Due to Deslocuta being flipped, I am allowed to draw a card. The zombie camel is wrapped up in the chain of the Amazon and becomes inert. You're not the only one with an effect happening. Due to the effect of my Amazonas trainee, if she would defeat a monster, she sends it to your deck and increases her attack by 200. The trainee pulls and spins in place, which lifts the camel's corpse from the ground before swinging it like a giant version of a hammer-throwing event before sending the mass towards Odeon. He acts impartial to the event as the camel disintegrates into light and goes into his deck. Unaware to everyone who's watching, Odeon simply placed the card in the deck but just didn't comment on the theatrics. Amazonas trainee, ATK, 1500 greater than 1700. Mai looks at her hand, then ends her turn. Odeon draws his card and looks at the field. From my hand I'll play Temple of the Kings and Dark Room of Nightmare. He places them on each edge of his dual disc spell and trap zone. These cards cause the surroundings to change like a field spell. The surroundings take on an ancient Egyptian tomb-like ascetic with exposed sandstone and hieroglyphs. A pair of lit braziers light the surroundings, but they cast shadows which depict monsters just out of sight ready to strike. Temple of the Kings, spell/continuous. Dark Room of Nightmare, spell/continuous. Lastly, I'll summon another monster in face-down defense before activating another spell from my hand, with it being Gold Sarcophagus. Within the tomb a pedestal appears, and onto of it appears a golden box with the Millennium Eye imprinted upon it. Besides the pedestal, the face-down monster appears as if like a guard for the tomb's treasure. Gold Sarcophagus, spell. The Gold Sarcophagus holds relics of the past, but for this duel it allows me to remove a card from my deck from play and retrieve it in 2 turns. A white undetailed card of light appears over the sarcophagus and floats into it before the lid of the sarcophagus closes, locking it tight. With that I'll end my turn. Mai draws her card and gives the change of scenery appear before focusing back on the duel. Well, since you're playing so defensive, I means I have to go on the offensive. I'll summon Amazonas Swordswoman and have her attack your face down. The card appears in front of Mai, and stepping out of is a bronze-haired woman with wild hair and a purple crown. She charges out with both ferocity and grace before slamming her sword down on the face-down card. Amazoness Swords Woman Earth, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 1500/Def, 1600. The sound of impact occurs, but it's more of squelchy slop as a rotting corpse-like mummy in red and blue wraps appears to climb out from the card with the sword embedded in its torso but seemingly unharmed from the blade's insertion. Poison Mummy Earth, Zombie/Effect, ATK, 1000/Def, 1800. The mummy tries to strike at the swordswoman, but she dodges in time and returns to Mai's field before taking out a second sword. She's called a swordswoman for a reason. Odeon speaks, when Poison Mummy is flipped you take 500 damage, but also due to the effect of Dark Room of Nightmare, you take an additional 300. The Poison Mummy reaches for the blade in its chest before ripping it out in a shower of gore and liquids. The liquids coalesce into a ball above the zombie before being fired at Mai like a poisonous blob of goo. The Amazoness Swords Woman reacts and swings at the blob of goo and slices a portion of it off before sending towards Odeon using the flat of her blade like a baseball bat. The balls of goo hit the pair at the same time, dealing damage to the both of them. Mai's LP, 4000 greater than 3200. Merrick's LP, 4000 greater than 3700. Shivering at the thought of being covered in goo. If this was real, Mai composes herself before speaking. Swordswoman's effect, you take any battle damage I would have taken in a battle with her. Anyway, my trainee can't beat the mummy. She goes to speak more, but Odeon cuts in. In response to taking the damage, I'll activate one of my face downs. Attack and receive. This causes 700 more damage to you, which is increased due to Dark Room of Nightmare to 1000. The mummy, still holding the sword, throws it at Mai, and in flight it seems to gain an edge of darkness. It strikes her, dealing damage to her. Mai's LP, 3200 greater than 2200. With a bitter expression on her face, she says, "I'll end my turn." Before he draws, Odeon speaks, "At the end of your turn, I'll activate one of my face downs. I activate Needle Wall. Needle Wall, Trap/Continuous. This card designates each of your monster zones 1 to 5, and at my standby phase I roll a die to determine a monster zone that is crushed with any monster on it being destroyed." At his words, the monster zones on Mai's field get marked with her swordswoman on 2 and trainee on 3. I now draw and throw my first die. He draws, then presses a button on his dual disc. From what seems to be the ceiling of the tomb, a sandstone cube is dropped, and it rolls around. It moves for a small time before landing on a 5. In an instant a pillar falls from the ceiling pronged with sharp spikes and smashes into Mai's 5th monster zone. Too bad. Well, let's me begin your descent into doom. I'll tribute my Poison Mummy to summon the mystical beast of Circuit. At his words, the Poison Mummy on the field starts to spasm and writhe erratically. The zombie lets out a groan of pain before its form decays and morphs. This takes a few moments, but the mummy's blue and red wraps start to bulge outwards before straining, like a cocoon before metamorphism. In a loud crack, the wrap cocoon snaps and a large creature that can only be described, the mixture between a scorpion, worm and dragon, appears with many black chitinous legs and arms with a pale red pulsating exoskeleton which leads to a maw of many teeth. Mystical Beast of Circuit Earth, Fairy/Effect, ATK, 2500/Def, 2000. You'll have my beast attack your trainee. At his words, his monstrosity springs into action and goes to attack the woman warrior. The beast charges forth, and when it's about to harm the trainee, a grand machete-like blade appears against the monster's claw, blocking it at the last moment. Wielding it is a blue-haired woman in grand metal Amazoness armor. In response, I'll activate my own face down, Dramatic Rescue. Dramatic Rescue, Trap. This allows me to save my trainee and by returning her to my hand before summoning another monster from my hand, in this case, my Amazoness Queen. Amazoness Queen Earth, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 2400/Def, 1800. Off the screen I can metaphorically hear the moronic tones of Joey taking about, even though she now hears she's still weaker than the monstrosity. Due to Amazoness Queen's effect, Amazons cannot be destroyed by battle. At her words, the queen parries the monster's claw, but the parry sends a shard of the beast's claw to be sent to hit Mai's LP, 2200 greater than 2100. Odeon isn't happy at that, but he continues his turn, not betraying his irritation. I'll play one card face down before ending my turn. My draws before immediately playing the card. I play Pot of Greed to draw 2. Pot of Greed, spell. She draws more and looks at her field. First I'll play one card face down before going to the battle phase. I'll have my Amazoness Swordswoman attack your beast. Her words cause a silence to occur, but her words act out as the swordswoman readies her second blade before sprinting at the beast more focused on the Amazoness queen doesn't catch the weakling's attack in time, allowing her to cut one of its claws off at a joint. The beast flails in pain before going to strike at the weakling that harmed it. When it does, the queen moves and blocks the strike to hit the swordswoman, who picks up the dropped claw and throws it at Odeon before retreating while being protected by her queen. The claw strikes Odeon, who watches the display without emotion. While she's retreating, the swordswoman even retrieves her first sword, so she's now wielding a pair of large swords, one in each hand. Rodon next to me approves of that action. Merrick's LP, 3,700 greater than 2,700. Most people are still confused due to the combat, but with the life points result they remember the effect of Amazoness swordswoman. With that, Mai ends her turn, and at the start of Odeon's turn, two things happen in an order once he draws. First, the golden sarcophagus near him unseals itself, presenting a card for him to collect, as well as another sandstone die is rolled. In an instant it lands on two. As Odeon adds the card to his hand, the pillar from the ceiling falls down upon the swordswoman, who tries to guard against it using her blades, but she's crushed into a paste on the floor due to the sheer impact of the trap. The queen looks angrily at Odeon, but it's his turn, but he doesn't seem to do anything special. I'll summon a monster face down and end my turn. Mai looks at Odeon with suspicion before drawing a card for her turn. I'll resummon my Amazoness trainee and play one card on the field face down before attacking your face down with my trainee. The trainee appears again, and with her chain she goes to attack the face down. With some surprise, a familiar zombie camel appears. In a repeat of the first turn, the zombie dies and Odeon is allowed to draw a card. Mai with an irritated look sighs before ending her turn even after her monster returns to 1700 ATK. Odeon simply draws before another sandstone die falls and this time lands on a 1, the pillar misses the pair. Odeon seems to size up his cards before normal summoning a monster for the first time in the duel. I'll summon a man with Jojit. When summoned, I'm allowed to look at one set card on your field, and since you have two, I'll target the left one. This causes Mai to flinch as it's revealed to be a transparent wall of reflective crystals. A man with Jojit Dark, Spellcaster/Effect, ATK, 1600/Def, 1600. Mirror Wall, Trap/Continuous. Odeon simply nods before letting the card fall back down. I'll activate a Mystical Space Typhoon from my hand to destroy your mirror wall. Mystical Space Typhoon, Spell/Quick. A small, localized tornado appears in the tomb and a bolt of lightning strikes down on the face down, shattering it like glass. Now I'll have my beast attack your trainee. The beast goes to strike at the Amazoness, but Mai reacts. I'll activate my other face down, my Amazoness Archers. Amazoness Archers, Trap. As if in an ambush, a flurry of arrows appears from blind spots and impale into the beast and the robe of the man with a golden eye. This causes both of your monsters to temporarily lose 500 attack points and forces them to attack this turn. Mystical Beast of Circuit, ATK, 2500 greater than 2000. A man with a Jojit, ATK, 1600 greater than 1100. The beast continues again without instruction since its rampage is total. It strides towards the trainee, who looks at nervously. The beast goes to strike at the trainee, but the ever-dutiful queen steps in to block the strike, but beast has learned and strikes with another of its claws. This causes the trainee to be struck, but the hit just sends her reeling. In her reeling, her grappling hook is sent flying and strikes at Mai, equal to the force of the attack. Mai's LP, 2100 greater than 1800. Thinking he's smart, the man with the magic eye goes to attack the trainee while she's down, hoping to please the beast, but as he goes for the attack, he feels his arms are pulled out of the way as hidden wires on the arrows embedded in his robe cause him to flail. The trainee is able to stand back up and she watches as the man is flailing in his robes and makes her grappling hook swing towards the man. Being too preoccupied with his robe acting like a puppeteer, he doesn't notice the flying hook before it's right in front of his eye. It's an Egyptian eye as it pierces perfectly, defeating him. The man blows up in a blast of light and Odeon loses some life points in the blast. The hook returns to the trainee and now glows with a gold-like luster. Merrick's LP, 2700 greater than 2100. Amazoness trainee, ATK, 1700 greater than 1900. Odeon actually shows a scowl of annoyance before he goes to end his turn. Mai, now smiling at her turn, draws and her smile just grows. From my hand I'll activate my Harpy's Feather Duster to destroy all of your spell and traps on the field. Harpy's Feather Duster, spell. Odeon, still scowling, speaks. In response, I activate my Temple of the Kings to tribute my Mystical Beast of Circuit to special summon a card of my choice from my hand. deck or field. The temple starts to decay, and the walls start to become ruins. The beast itself starts to decay and calcify as if time itself is attacking the beast. It causes the beast to become a white husk upon the field. At that point the feather duster appears and causes a flurry of fake sand to fly everywhere, making the temple disappear. The only thing left on Odian's field is the calcified remains of the beast. "Where is the monster you summoned, Merrick? I don't see it." Mai says in slight confusion. Odian responds, "Oh, it's just there." At his words he points to the calcified remains as it starts to move. The remains start to animate, and from the abundance of chitin and bones a creature made of bone and skulls appears with a core that glows red. Ryu Kaki Dark, Zombie/Effect, ATK, 2400/Def, 2000. At the sight of the monster, Mai looks annoyed since she just got rid of one monster and now another difficult one appears. She looks at it then her hand before making a plan. "I'll have my Amazonas Queen attack your monster." At her words the Amazonas Queen nods before charging the arisen monster. The creature detects her approach and swings its arm to strike at the warrior. The queen jumps onto the arm of the creature and runs along it to get closer. The zombie raises its other arm to attack, but she jumps over it and leaps towards the core of the monster. She plunges her great machete into the core of the creature's chest. The creature in a bellow of rage start to glow. The queen looks towards the trainee who is watching her and smiles. The trainee, realizing what happening, goes to run and help her queen, but the core of the creature explodes in a blast of red energy, taking the queen with it. Odian simply speaks. Ryu Kaki's effect destroys all warriors or spellcasters which battled with it via an effect, defeating your Amazonas Queen. As he ends his words, he spots in time as a hook glowing lightly with gold comes and strikes him for a lot of damage. Merrick's LP, 2100 greater than 200. The enraged Amazonas trainee retracts her hook and glares at Odian. Mai looks annoyed since she doesn't have a monster in hand to just summon and win the duel with when she could have. She places one card face down before she ends the turn. Odian draws a card and simply plays a card of Sanctity, refilling both of their hands up to 6 again. With his hand refilled he plays a card from it. Card of Sanctity, spell. Monster Reborn, spell. I'll revive Ryu Kaki and then I'll summon a monster face down. The skeletal monstrosity arises from the crater of its demise, leers at the Amazon who looks at with hatred. Now I have a bad feeling about that face down, so I'll just play 2 cards face down and end my turn. Mai seems annoyed at that, but she draws a card for her turn. I'll activate from my hand a Graceful Charity. To draw 3, then discard 2. Graceful Charity, spell. She goes though the draw and discards and smiles. You were right to worry about my face down, but you misinterpreted its danger. I'll activate Harpy's Hunting Ground. Harpy's Hunting Ground, spell/field. Next I'll summon to my field Harpy Lady 1. With her appearance the Hunting Ground allows me to destroy one of your spell or traps, so I'll destroy the right one. The Harpy appears from the clouds. The female beast woman has bright red hair and green wings attached to her arms appears. She dive bombs the field and strikes at Odian's card, but he doesn't react, besides revealing it to be a serpent-like creature in trap form. Harpy Lady number 1 Winged Beast/Effect, ATK, 1300, 1800/Def, 1400. I'll play another card from my hand, Elegant Egotist, which will allow me to special summon more Harpy Ladies, in this case Harpy Lady Sisters, and I'll have them take out your last face down card. Elegant Egotist, spell. 3 more Harpies break from the clouds, making the Harpy count up to 4. The trio goes to dive bomb the last face down. Harpy Lady Sisters Winged Beast/Effect, ATK, 1950, 2450/Def, 2100. Odian looks at Mai with a passive face before taking the card and revealing it. You're not the only person to be patient. I was planning to see if you were to summon a stronger monster and I was correct. In response to your summoning I'll use Solemn Judgment to pay half of my remaining life points to negate your Harpy Sisters summoning. Solemn Judgment, trap/counter. The Harpy Sisters, still diving from the skies, feel an immense pressure upon them, but they continue to go for the strike before a trio of lightning bolts break from the clouds as well, striking the trio down. The Harpies are fried in the sky and become limp in the air before become pixelated motes of light. Merrick's LP, 200 greater than 100. This causes Mai to scowl. From there she looks at her field and points her Amazonas trainee to attack Odian's face-down monster. She goes to do so, but her hook is deflected by a bronze shield as a zombie wields it with surprising skill. A chip of the shield is sent flying at Mai. Royal Keeper Earth, Zombie/Effect, ATK, 1600/Def, 1700 greater than 2000. Mise LP 1800 greater than 1700. Annoyed at the turn of events, my ends her turn. At this Odeon draws and looks at his field. I'll tribute Royal Keeper to summon Great Dizard. A coffin rises from the ground behind the Royal Keeper, and it walks into it willingly. The coffin is sealed by a slab of stone rising from the ground to cover it, and appearing from behind it is a robed man in ornate robes with a unique headdress. Great Dizard Dark, Spellcaster/Effect, ATK, 1900/Def, 2300. I'll have Ryu Kaki attack your trainee and Great Dizard attack your harpy. At his words, the trainee watches as the skeletal monster goes to attack her, and while that happens, the harpy who's watching this unfold from the sky has to start dodging void bolts being rained towards her coming from the spellcaster. The pair of female combatants hold out for longer than they should have, but one gets crushed by the sheer weight of the monster smashing into her, while the other gets overwhelmed by the flood of bolts making her fall from the sky and fading into motes of pixelated light. Mise LP 1700 greater than 1100. At this, Odeon ends his turn and my draws while having no monsters or any cards on the field. She looks at the last card with hope and feels like she has it as she reveals the card. I activate a Pot of Greed to draw 2, she does this and draws 2 more cards. With those cards she feels she's back in the game. I'll summon a monster face down and place this card face down. Before ending my turn, Odeon draws, looks at the drawn card before looking at the field. I'll have Grand Dizard attack your face down, he orders, and the robbed man charges a magical ball to fling at the face down, but my responds, I'll activate a mirror wall having your monsters attack for the turn. She does this before revealing the mirror wall. The monster is revealed to be a harpy lady, and my thinks she's won since Odeon would lose from splashback damage, but something happens. The magical ball from Grand Dizard travels towards the mirror wall and completely shatters it before striking the harpy, destroying it. Mirror Wall had to target Grand Dizard, and due to his effect, since he's already destroyed a monster, any spell of trap that targets him is negated and destroyed. Odeon's words ring in the air before he says some words, and the white abomination strides over the Mai and strikes her for the last of her life points. Mise LP 1100 greater than 0. Merrick wins. Chapter 37, Chapter 35 Light and Darkness upon Infinity. Watching the duel between Odeon and Mai was interesting, mainly due to seeing how passive of a duelist Odeon is. Yes, he summoned the stronger monsters and won in the end, but most of his plan revolves around defensive plays, I can tell, and just simply using the beast as his juggernaut. Mai played well to prevent the beast from picking up steam with the queen, but she pressed too much. When she pushed, Odeon hit her with an unnoticed uppercut which sent her reeling to the knockout. I look around the room and notice something interesting. The Kaiba brothers are together even after my contract came to light. I turn back to the close-by screen and notice Miquella nearby sitting on a table in spiritual form, looking between me and a certain brunette who is surrounded by her brother's friends. I walk towards him, and I catch his attention. I give him a look and start to spiritually speak to him. You're staring, Miquella, you must be curious about something, it doesn't take a genius to know what. He looks at me with a look of bleak curiosity. That cancerous tumor you spat out is still on my mind. The maelstrom is as chaotic as ever, but without it, it seems to missing something important. I get to the table and start looking through its buffet selection before giving Miquella a side eye. Like a shadow. My words cause Miquella to look confused and shaken. How would you know that? You can't peer at your soul's chaotic maelstrom, but as I look at it, seems you're right, it's like it's lost a massless layer upon it. I shovel some shrimp onto my plate, looking away from him. It's because I know more about the realm where that clot came from, and its main concept is light and darkness. I can assume it was acting like a light source in the soul maelstrom in a way, and where there is light it casts a shadow on everything around it. With little sound, I watch as Runny appears opposite from Miquella, flanking me with her hands interlocked. I sense there is a story behind that world, but I feel it's not a nice one. I munch on the shrimp. You would be correct, that world was very much like your own. It started out as a blank canvas capable of anything. Ruled by dragons, unaffected by the touch of time, but unlike how you had the crucible to guide the growth of the lands between, the realm was the site of a great phenomenon which shaped it. My words catch the attention of the pair, since with my comparison to their own realm they can feel the narrative weight of it. The phenomena was the sparking of the first flame, which I believe was the first in all existence. With its creation, concepts of heat became a thing that propagated throughout existence. With heat comes cold, and with the birth of a pair of conflicting concepts came to start a cascade of other concepts, first with propagation and decay, which led to the distinction of life and death as states of being. Sound and silence. But the most important for that realm was that of body and soul. My story of the first flame causes the other demigods to appear for the story time since they have nothing better to do. I say that body and soul were the most important since in that realm the denizens were probably affected by the first flame. Actually each had immortal bodies but they each had no soul within them, so they were listless and simple beings with no purpose. This changed when a few of them came across the first flame deep underground. Within the flame they found grand souls which held power over the concepts the flame propagated. In this case, the main four were Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight with the light soul which was the strongest and greatest of the grand souls present. The Pyromancer Witch of Izalith who held the life soul. Nito, the first of the dead with his death soul which could control both death and decay. Lastly the forgotten furtive pygmy with the dark soul. Each one of these beings was referred to as lords with their respective souls being referred to as lord souls. At this point, Godwin who's resting on his friend speaks. Let me guess what happens next. They go to war against the dragons for control of the realm. I just nod while munching on a chocolate-covered eclair. You right, Godwin. The next thing they did was try and fight the everlasting dragons but with their scales of stone being impervious to their attempts. The key word is try, but within the dragons there existed an aberration. As a draconic form of albinism there was a dragon born without the scales that made the dragons immune to the effects of time. The albino dragon Seth the Scaleless who in my belief was himself a product of the first flame which created the disparity of his form to other dragons held a hatred for his kin due to this disparity, and also due to the fact they held an item from him which would grant him immortality like them. So, Seth got in contact with the lords and made a deal, the weakness of the dragons in return for his pardon and the immortality-granting item in question. With the deal struck the lords overcame the everlasting dragons to take over the realm and weirdly enough the lords kept their deal with Seth who became a sort of advisor to the lords, not sure really. They had a grand age of light where the lords ruled but unbeknownst to the lords every flame must fade so the longer the age of light lasted the more and more the first flame started to fade. The lords derived their power from the first flame so while it faded so did their power, when they noticed each lord acted in different ways. Nito promptly went to try and sleep through the disaster, not caring since death is death so they would be fine they thought. The Witch of Izalith being a grand pyromancer tried to ignite a new flame to replace the first flame but in her hubris just warped her life soul to create a font of rampant chaotic life which made monsters and overall chaos tied to the first flame itself as long as it was still lit. Lastly, the Lord of Sunlight had a thought that would prolong his age of light but would start a cruel cycle of rebirth and decay, which scholars from that realm would refer to as the first sin. He fed himself, his grand soul and the many souls of his loyal knights to the first flame to act as kindling. This worked but scarred the world making it, so souls now were a tangible concept to those without lord souls, and the more souls a being had the stronger they were. This time Runny cuts in with a question. What about the pygmy you told us about? This causes me to smile since her own form is a pygmy in comparison to the other demigods besides maybe Miquella. The pygmy, or as he was called Manus, was the most successful of the great lords with his method to stave off the decay of the first flame. Now due to the nature of his soul and how weak it was in comparison to the others he was the first to realize the first flame was fading so his plan was both ingenious and so blatant that the other lords never realized until it was too late with his victory. This causes some of the demigods to look very interested. Like the Witch of Izalith, he had the idea to essentially create a new flame, but they realized that no matter what, he couldn't create a flame greater than the source of his dark soul so he had the idea of an ever-propagating flame which would form new small flames which themselves would make more flames without end. So, he split his already weak dark soul into many fragments and set the sparks to propagate humanity and humans as a race creating men within the realm. The lords noticed the propagation of humans since it's kind of impossible to not notice such growth, but they thought it was just a result of their age of light giving life to the realm so they ruled over them as gods. Within each human was a minuscule sliver of the dark soul acting as a miniature flame, giving birth and fading away like a normal flame, to create an endless chain of fires which could outlast the age of light, into the age of the dark. My explanation of the pygmy's plan causes some of the demigods to be stunned at his creativity and forethought. Regardless of Gwyn's actions to keep his reign of light alive, in the end, the pygmy would win but the followers of Gwyn used the humans to relight the first flame by filling them with vast amounts of souls before having them become ashes within the kiln of the first flame. This process of reigniting the first flame occurred for countless ages. With each rekindle the world was sapped more and more of its life as when a soul entered the flame it didn't return since it was used as fuel so at some point the end had to come. Those cards I puked out were key figures from the last cycle of the rekindling process. At that point the realm had become a decayed mess and there were no beings of strong enough souls left to light the flame, so a failsafe Gwyn built into the flame activated, reviving the remains of those who could. But at that time, the Risen realized the world was screwed and chose to live out the last days of the world in their own ways, but another Risen appeared and slew each of the revived beings, becoming strong enough to reignite the first flame somehow. But through their journey they were dragged into a subdimension full of cold and rot, where they were requested to get a little painter girl some special pigment from the last settlement in the world, the Ring City. There in the Ring City, with the help of some allies, they found the city in a pristine condition but just at the brink of the starting to decay like the world around it, and the only holding the city together were two key entities. First was the one of Gwyn's daughters, Filianor, who held the soul with control over time, and a white shell which entrapped her in a never-ending dream, causing Filianor's time soul to keep the city in a time bubble, unaware of the world outside the city ring. When the Ashen One finds her, his presence is enough to shatter the white shell with a touch, sending the time bubble to the end of time within the realm where Filianor would die when time would fracture to feed the flame, since nothing else was left. Most of the demigods are covered in grim fascination. What does the death of time look like to the world? There the Ashen One saw the result of reigniting the flame endlessly. It was all just ashen dunes and grand ruins of civilizations. Everything is consumed to feed the flame, so even time itself was being fed to the flame. This allowed the Ashen One to be there at the end of time while being able to return to their own time later. There at the decay of time, he found a friend who gained the same quest from the painter, but the Ashen One wasn't fully aware of what the paint she asked for really was. It only became apparent when they met their friend. At that point, the Ashen One essentially time traveled while their friend didn't, so for the rest of time his friend essentially hunted every being with humanity in existence, so at that point, they had the closest thing akin to the dark soul running through their body. His blood was the pigment the painter asked for. At that point the friend was also crazy due to the endless slaughter and the power running through him, and attacked the Ashen One in his madness, but in the end, the Ashen One won. At their victory, they possibly made a decision and faced the guardian of the kiln of the first flame, which was a living god made from the combined power of every being who fed themselves to the flame. In the end, the Ashen One overcame that god and stood at the embers of the first flame. There he had three choices. The first was to doom the world to the ashen hell they saw, and the second was to call on his companion to snuff the embers for an age of darkness. There were other options, but their intentions are unclear. For one would have the Ashen One become a lord of the dark, but not by snuffing the flame, and the last option would have had them betray their companion to consume the first flame to become the next lord of cinder, while making it so while they're alive the flame won't fade. I just munch on some chocolate cookies I had within reach as the demigods hear about the end of the other realm. When I finish the story, I notice that the whole group of duelists have grouped up at the machine for the duel draft. I walk over as I see one pop out of the spout. The guard holds it and looks at it. He looks around the room and throws the sphere towards someone. With a firm grasp which caught the ball without even looking, Sito Kaiba takes the sphere depicting the image of his blue eyes white dragon blasting something beneath it with their breath before walking to the elevator for the roof. The next sphere is produced by the machine. The guard takes the sphere and looks around the room for the contestant but doesn't find them. He then raises his hand to his earpiece and then looks to a screen. This causes everyone else to look at it. Upon it is the depiction of a veiled woman standing on the roof arena with a dual disc in white flowing robes in the wind. The guard looks at the screen, then at his roster, then shrugs, then starts to speak. The next duelist to duel with Sito Kaiba is already there, it seems. He says this and shows the sphere which depicts the Millennium Necklace and a veil arcing under the ornament like Ishizu's veil. Within the gap created by the arching veil a pair of eyes are visible under the Millennium Necklace. Both Kaiba and Ishizu take their place on the arena before starting the duel. Sito's LP, 4000. Ishizu's LP, 4000. Chapter 38, Chapter 36. The tournament continues along. When the duel between Ishizu and Sito Kaiba starts, I tune it out since I already know what's going to happen. Honestly, I think the Millennium Necklace was the most unwieldy, yet now I think it is in the running to contend with the key for the most powerful of the bunch. I think this because the moment the pair of their spheres indicated they were going against each other, I came to a possibility which changed my idea of its power level. The Millennium Necklace doesn't only display a future, it also allows its wearer to determine an outcome, but I would guess its effect is more manipulating the probabilities than just drawing over fate's canvas. For instance, with the 14 spheres in the machine, their duel chance was like 1 in 91 possible results, which is like nearly a 1% chance. But I would also assume it can't affect the free will of others, because if it did she wouldn't have lost to me before. Additionally, from that duel, I would also assume she can't affect the probability of cards which contain spirits since they have a will within them. I look around the room and spot someone who I thought wouldn't be here, speaking with another person who I wasn't expecting on the blimp but just didn't notice until now. Maybe they just arrived, who knows. Standing looking at one of the screens is Kaiba standing next to Maximilian Pegasus. With a look that shows my inner gremlin, I walk over the pair. They both notice my approach. One is smiling, the other is annoyed. Well, that's not a very nice face to be showing your company's new head of public relations. Vice President Miquella. At my words, Maximilian Pegasus's smile gains a hint of a smirk at the new ammo. Oh, was there a reshuffling of the staff I wasn't aware of, Miquella boy? I lean to the side and make a fake sad smile as if not happy at the employment. It was a rapid employment made by Kaiba himself. I went from a shareholder to a corner office so fast even he didn't realize the speed of my promotion until it was too late. This causes Pegasus to chuckle lightly. Fully legal, I hope, notarized with lawyers and all. At this, I just produced the contract and at the point it's signed by Kaiba core lawyers. I will say at the time I was using some minor perception blocking to hide the juicier details so they didn't warn Kaiba, but Miquella knew about the clause. I just blindsided him before he could warn Sito, but Maximilian doesn't know that. Signed and notarized. The funniest part is that Sito can't fire me for 2 months, so this will annoy him for at least 2 months. Pegasus just chuckles in amusement. Once he stops chuckling, he gives me a look. Well, Drogon boy, I am curious why you approached us too. Shouldn't you be watching the duel between Kaiba boy and Ishizu? I just shrug. I don't really need to since I know Sito will win in the end. I beat her before and know her skill level isn't as high as Sito's. My words cause Miquella to nod like what I said was a fact and Pegasus to take a sip of a wine glass he was holding. But I approached you since we had our deal, so I felt it prudent to at least show you the different types of cards I can make for you to legalize in the rule book. This catches the attention of Miquella as well as Pegasus, who just sports a great smile. From my pilot coat, I take a card from my newest deck and show it to him. Radon the Starscourge Dark, Warrior/XYZ/Effect, ATK, 3000/Def, 3000. Currently I'm only running a different type of card known as XYZs. They are summoned via a method that's like a mix between fusion and ritual. Fusion in the fact it requires a multitude of monsters on the field to be summoned, but it's ritual-like because it's dependent on the monster's level instead of being a named requirement like for fusions, all without ritual spell cards being required. I palm the hand and offer it to Pegasus, who I can trust. He might be a jester but even he can feel the spiritual might of the card in front of him, so he's careful. Both he and Miquella are interested in the card and quickly he is enamored with the card. He starts asking questions that I answer the best I can, like about the card types of origins with dimensional space being a factor, but he can tell I'm not an expert on the subject, so that curves his enthusiasm. One key question I feel he asks is when he points out on the card a visual anomaly in comparison to other cards. One last question about this card type: why are the level stars of the card outlined in black instead of the standard red? Knowing this, I answer, it's because for XYZ monsters don't have levels, they instead have ranks, similar to monster levels. Usually the higher the rank the stronger the card, and usually also its requirements to be summoned. Off the top of my head if I remember, there's a rank 10 XYZ that can just deal 2000 direct damage once per turn, while having the same ATK and def as the card I showed you. At my words, it causes Miquella and Pegasus to pause just at the thought of a card that is powerful to just deal half of a person's life points while being as powerful as Blue Eyes. At this point, Pegasus asks one last question which makes me think, well, as shocking as a card that powerful is, it must have a weakness. That reminds me, what major weakness would you think XYZs would have in general? The way you describe it, you speak how they can just appear at any time, so I would say a type of card that powerful must have a drawback. I nod at Pegasus's words. You are correct, the XYZ category of cards does have a downside. To use their effects, they require to expend an XYZ material which it only gains when it is summoned. It gains an XYZ material equal to the number of monsters used to summon it. So if it has no XYZ material attached, they can't use their effect. Take the card I showed you. If Radon lost all his materials, he loses the ability to attack directly. My words cause Pegasus to nod in confirmation while Miquella writes something down out of my sight. I don't care if he shares it with Sito since I will want to face Kaiba at his best. Thinking about Kaiba, I look at the screen and notice that in the time it took for Pegasus to appraise Radon's card, the duel is already over, obviously with the same result as canon. I shrug at that before looking at Pegasus and speaking, well, it seems they're about to do the next duelist draw, so I would like my card back. If I'm not picked, you can examine another of my unique cards if you want. With light reluctance, Pegasus returns the card, and most of the room looks towards the device as Sito makes his return to the room and approaches us, or more importantly Miquella. The machine lights up and spouts out the next duelist sphere. The guard picks up the sphere and examines it before looking around the room, then revealing the sphere. The sphere depicts an image like a portrait playing card. In the card depicts a cute angel on one half of the card and a tricky devil on the other. The sphere is thrown into the crowd and a small girl catches it. The next duelist is Rebecca Hawkins. Those around her are slightly surprised at her early duel, but she just smiles at the rest of Yugi's friends. She waits for the other duelist to be announced before heading up. The machine spits out another sphere. The guard takes it and gives it one glance before throwing it again into the crowd with little examination required. It lands in the hands of the only multicolored hair teenager in the tournament. Yugi Moto will be Rebecca's opponent. Yugi, now holding a sphere depicting the Millennium Puzzle that casts shadows which move depending on the light, looks at Rebecca in shock. Rebecca returns the expression with similar emotions and trepidations. Chapter 39, Chapter 37 Guides of Lords and Champions. When the pair of opponents were announcing, my first reaction was to smile like the devil at the ironically low probability of that pairing to happen. I knew friends could be dueling against each other, but I just wasn't expecting one so juicy. Now everyone here might not know the context of my amusement, but technically Rebecca is the queen of games since she's actually defeated Yugi even if he surrendered. She even has the ties of friendship from Yugi, which was rewarded at the same time as the title to Yugi just to make it more official. My smile fades though when I watch as Rebecca raises her hand and speaks. I would like to let Yugi continue on. I don't want to duel with a friend when this tournament is more important to him than for me. This catches everyone by surprise, even Yugi, who was still processing having to duel Rebecca, torn between a friend and stopping Merrick by any means. The guard who threw the spheres looks towards Kaiba, who looks as annoyed as everyone else and is complexed at the situation. At this point I step in. Having access to the distribution details for the coverage of the tournament, I know for a fact that this room isn't being broadcast, only really the machine itself when it's being drawn. Within the pilot coat, I grab my lapel and form a hidden microphone. Connecting to the guard's earpiece, I speak to him and relay a reasonable plan of action. After hearing my suggestion, he seems to nod. This causes Sito to look at me in suspicion since he's a sharp tool and can tell something is up straight away. The guard speaks. Due to distribution contracts for the tournament and the server itself, you need to access the arena on the roof to start the duel with Mr. Moto, then surrender on your turn for it to be allowed. Miss Hawking, we are sorry for the inconvenience. This causes most of those in attendance to mumble, but they accept it, thinking it's mainly due to how they weren't expecting this situation, so they didn't make a contingency for it. Those in the know about the system can smell the shit from a mile away, and my shit-eating grin catches the attention of the Kaiba brothers and Pegasus, but I don't notice as I start to skulk off. After learning about the situation, Yugi and Rebecca look at each other before walking to their respective elevators for each contestant. Yugi's friends minus Rebecca follow him. The doors to the elevators close to send them up, and Rebecca alone's stare is filled with determination to just give her friend the win. Let's mess with that. You know, this scenario is very funny. My words cause the little girl to jump as I am behind her in the elevator. What are you doing here? You appeared from nowhere. I was standing here in the elevator. You were just so focused on helping your friend that you didn't notice me until I caught your attention, I say with a smile while I know I simply used a perception blocking barrier. I remembered about the Mirage Rise and its magic. Rebecca just glares at me, so speak to her. I got in here to speak with you. I'm not pulling my favor, but I simply have a suggestion for you to listen to. Rebecca huffs and takes out her new deck before examining the cards, thinking for a moment before speaking. Go on then, I'll listen. It's not like I need to follow it or anything. I lean to the side and rest my chin on a raised hand. Why not have some fun instead of just surrendering? Have a fun duel with Yugi. If you're about to win, surrender then. If you lose, no big deal. This causes Rebecca to go silent and stop examining her cards, the thought not occurring to her probably because she's usually so focused on the win instead of the duel itself. Also, it would be a shame if you didn't use that deck I gave you, since you would be the first recorded person to use a synchro summon monster or XYZ monster. You would be known as a pioneer just like your grandfather. My honeyed words latching onto her want to be like her grandfather. It doesn't take much, but I can tell she's considering my suggestion just in time too, as the elevator opens to reveal the open-top arena. Both parties arrive at the same time, and the employee acting as the referee is waiting for everyone. He must be cold being out here for so long. Yugi's party is slightly confused at my appearance with Rebecca, but she walks to the platform and gets ready for the duel. I walk to the main group of teens, but I notice something when I approach. Hey Melina, would you like to meet someone very special? My question doesn't create a response for a second, but next to me materializes is Melina in spiritual form. Once she's out, she notices the person who's standing behind the group in spirit form. I start to mingle with the teens because why not? I keep an eye on the meeting of two guides. Melina, as she approaches the other spirit, can feel the kindred bond their bodies share due to their similar fates. Even if she doesn't know her story, she can tell their fates are very similar. I watch as the pair face off and politely bow to each other. Hello, I am Melina, a finger maiden in service of the two fingers who curry my champion to become the next Elden Lord. Hello Melina, I am the last fire keeper. I tend to the flame and tended to my lord's needs, helping him to end a world of flickering fire. I feel a great warmth within you, but with it a shadow of great sadness. This causes Melina to look away. We both know the end of her story is either a great sacrifice or a great betrayal made out of kindness. I have heard your story from him. You don't need to tell me, for I can feel the lingering remnants of you and your champion's decision in that world. Both women who have impacted their world massively seem to have a conversation without uttering another word before bowing to each other politely. Melina fades away back to my soul. Mind. Wherever they reside, while the Fire Keeper returns to acting as Serenity's shadow. While I was mingling with the teens with pointless and misdirecting words, I noticed that Serenity noticed the meeting of the guides. The duel was about to start, so everyone focused on it, but she looked at me with a questioning glance. When I can tell she goes to ask, I place a finger to my lips and say nothing, which only she noticed since the duel starts. I look at Rebecca and see she's smiling, not in a competitive way but more in a joyful way. I can see Yugi noticed that as well. Yugi's LP, 4000. Rebecca's LP, 4000. Chapter 40, Chapter 38, King and Queen of Games. Yugi Moto's LP, 4000. Rebecca Hawking's LP, 4000. The pair draw their hands, and Yugi starts by drawing. He also goes to end his turn feeling relaxed, thinking this is more of a formality, but before he signals the end of his turn, his eyes focus on Rebecca's and sees her determination within her eyes, which lock with his. You've changed your mind, haven't you, Rebecca? She nods and says with fire in her voice, yeah, I don't mind giving you the win, but while arriving here I realized something. In our last duel you were holding back. This time I want your full commitment to the duel. With a sorrowful smile on his face, Yugi lightly chuckles. Well, I was distracted before with your talks about the ownership of the 4th Blue Eyes card, so I wasn't fully in the game, but here and now I need to win this tournament. I can't play games. In a cutesy voice, Rebecca smiles and responds, yeah, that's why I'm willing to give up on the tournament, since it's more important to you than me. But, while in the elevator here, that shady guy gave me some incentive to duel you for real. This causes Yugi and most of the people present to look at me in confusion. I just shrug, since she's not wrong. I thought you wouldn't care about bribes. At his words she nodded. Well, yeah, he's not bribing me or forcing me to, but he convinced me we could just have a fun duel. At this point an evil thought appears in the gremlin's head. He even said if he could beat me here, he's willing to give you a powerful card he has. At this everyone is looking at me again, and I just stare at Rebecca, who has stuck their tongue out mischievously at me, sighing since I get a feeling Yugi won't duel at full power if I don't reach into my pilot jacket and manifest a single card, which is synonymous with the dark magician archetype in the modern day. Dark magical circle, spell/continuous. Since I have no reason not to, I reveal the card to the group, and being the fastest reader, T reads it and visually gulps. She looks towards Yugi and nods, showing it's not a joke. Yugi's face tenses and looks at Rebecca, then with a confident smirk he says, let duel then. I'll summon to the field a monster face down, then place 2 cards down before ending my turn. Rebecca smiles cutely and draws. She tilts her head side to side, considering her options before smiling. I know how tricky you are, Yugi, so I'll have to be tricky as well. From my hand I'll summon Aaron, Lightsworn Monk in attack position, then I'll equip from my hand Lightsworn Saber. Her words cause all of those who were present at their last match to be stunned, since new deck. The silence is prevalent as all the light in the arena starts to coalesce onto a monster zone. It shines for a second, then in a flash of red suddenly there is a female monk in white and red robes wielding a bow staff. She takes a steady stance before spinning her staff rapidly. The staff seems to catch remnants of the light that she appears in before forming into Glaive's head on the end of her staff. Aaron, Lightsworn Monk Light, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 1600-2300/Def, 1000. Lightsworn Saber, Spell/Equip. Reveling in the appearance of her monster, she continues to speak. I'll play one more face down before having Aaron eject your monster from the field. His words cause Yugi to snap out of the shock and look at her. He simply reveals his face down monster. A gruff buffman wielding a large shield that blocks the sight of his body appears crouching behind his shield. Big Shield Gardener Earth, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 100/Def, 2600. Yugi doesn't activate any traps since the monster should be able to block the monk, but he sees that Rebecca is passive and isn't saying anything. The reason why becomes apparent when the monk starts to charge the shielded warrior. The warrior is stalwart like a castle wall but like a ninja. The monk uses her light glaive to hook onto the top of the shield before climbing over it. In a feat of acrobatics she somersaults over the warrior still holding her glaive. From her position behind him she again uses her glaive like a hook but this time onto the ankle of the warrior. Being the bulky shield user he's slow to react to the actions of the monk. This is to his detriment when the monk pulls at the warrior's leg and sends him to the ground in a swift moment. The monk looks at the warrior and starts to walk away realizing she can't kill the warrior, but as she walks away, she simply pokes the big heavy shield that's teetering on falling over. The warrior goes to get up, but his form is then crushed by the big shield, which causes him to pixelate. Yugi's face is confused but Rebecca in a chipper voice speaks to him. Aaron's effect is that if she attacks a defense position monster, she sends it to the deck before damage calculation, so I take no damage and you're out a monster. She has to attack it so she can't attack again. Hearing her, Yugi sends his Gardener to the deck. This time Rebecca nods before ending her turn. Yugi goes to draw but notices something with Rebecca. She takes the top 3 cards of her deck, looks at them, then sends them to the graveyard. "What are you doing, Rebecca?" Yugi asks since he's confused. She tilts her head and looks at Aaron. Aaron's second effect is that at the end of the turn I have to send the top 3 cards of my deck to the graveyard. Most of this deck monster have effects like that. Yugi's brow bends at that information since he and the pharaoh quickly realize this definitely isn't her past deck, so it's completely unknown to them. "I'll draw and then from my hand I'll play the card Soul Exchange from my hand. This allows me to use your monster for the tribute of one of my own. I'll do so by using Aaron to summon from my hand Dark Magician Girl." In a flash of light, a red soul appears replacing where Aaron was. The soul travels the field like a free spirit and floats over to Yugi's side. After a second a golden circle starts to form beneath the soul before flashing its own light and starting to suck the soul into the circle. The soul tries to fight back but the suction force is too strong. The soul is dragged into the circle and disappears as if the circle were a portal. A second later a puff of white smoke appears and from it reveals an iconic blue-grabbed magical girl with blonde hair. Soul Exchange, Spell. Dark Magician Girl Dark, Spellcaster/Effect, ATK, 2000/Def, 2000. The appearance of the trademark Yu-Gi-Oh! Magical Girl brings a smile to everyone present besides the ref who is constantly stone-faced. The magical girl poses with her wand and looks at everyone around curiously, but I can tell the moment she sees me she flinches. Maybe it's because she can see the figures behind me. She returns to looking at Rebecca with a drop of sweat, unaware to everyone, but it's unnoticed as Yugi starts to speak. "I'll have Dark Magical Girl attack directly." She raises her rod to the sky and dark magic forms at the tip before being sent as an orb of darkness towards Rebecca, who doesn't respond to the attack with a face down. Rebecca's LP, 4000 greater than 2000. I tune out the peanut gallery as they exclaimed about the reduction of her life points by half in a single turn. May it get so annoying that after Joey speaks something stupid, I simply say one thing. It doesn't matter, the only life point that matters is the last one. This shuts them up and with my words, Yugi places a card face down before he ends his turn, allowing Rebecca to return fire. She draws in silence before looking again at her cards. From my hand, I'll play Charge of the Light Brigade. For the cost of sending the top 3 cards of my deck to the graveyard it allows me to add a level 4 or below Lightsworn to my hand from the deck. Charge of the Light Brigade, Spell. She goes to mill her deck. When she does one of the cards starts to glow with light. This causes Rebecca to smile and exclaim, "Yippee, an effect activated, let's see which one." She takes the card and looks at it. As she examines the card its glow becomes a light violet color. Well I wasn't expecting it, but I like this. I activate the effect of Weiss, Lightsworn Archfiend. His effect is if he's sent from the deck to the graveyard, he allows me to special summon a Lightsworn from my graveyard. Saying this out loud just gave me a game plan. She finishes with a smile/smirk. Weiss, Lightsworn Archfiend Light, Fiend, Tuner, Effect, ATK, 0/Def, 1700. I'll use his effect to special summon from my grave Minerva, Lightsworn Maiden who I discarded last turn. The light violet light leaps from Rebecca's hand and onto the field on a monster zone. The zone itself starts to glow in similar light before softening into a pale pink shade, and in a flash of pink light appears a bronze-haired maiden in white robes with a pet owl resting on her singular glove. Minerva, Lightsworn Maiden Light, Spellcaster, Tuner Effect, ATK, 800/def, 200. Also, we still haven't resolved the March of the Light Brigade, so I'll add a Lightsworn to my hand. It won't be staying there long since I'll activate its effect. I use the effect of Lightsworn Dragonling. By showing a Lightsworn in my graveyard, in this case Weiss, the Dragonling can be special summoned for free. Again, the light violet light appears from the graveyard before jumping onto the field. This time it finds a different zone than before. The zone in question starts to be illuminated with the violet light before it changes to a bright and vibrant yellow color, and again in a flash of light appears this time a small white dragon which appears to be covered in pure white feathers. Lightsworn Dragonling Light, Dragon/Effect, ATK, 1500/def, 1300. The tiny dragonling roars to intimidate everyone, but everyone including Dark Magician Girl is just enamored with how cute it looks. Props to the visual designing team behind the 3D image tech. Now with my dragonling on the field, I'll use its second effect. When it's special summoned, it allows me to send another Lightsworn to the grave from my deck. For this I'll send Felis, Lightsworn Archer, whose effect is to be summoned to the field if sent from the deck to the graveyard due to monster effect. The feathered dragonling roars with power and a diamond of yellow light appears behind it. The diamond starts spinning like a coin before taking on an earthy brown color. The diamond of light stops spinning to reveal its new form before being sent skyward like a coin before landing on an empty monster zone. Light the other Lightsworn in a flash of colored light. A green-haired cat girl archer in adventure gear appears ready to hit and run in a defensive stance. Felis, Lightsworn Archer Light, Beast Warrior/Tuner Effect, ATK, 1100/def, 2000. Most of the gallery is stunned that with a single card and some luck, she got 3 monsters on the field without even normal summoning. Now since I have a field like this changes my plans slightly, but maybe it is for the better. Anyway, for my hand I'll normal summon Lila, Lightsworn Sorceress. Again, a manifestation of light appears in Rebecca's hand. This time the light takes on a pure blue hue, and appearing from its flash is a tall lithe woman in flowing white and golden robes with hair as dark as the night wielding a scepter. Lila, Lightsworn Sorceress Light, Spellcaster/Effect, ATK, 1700/def, 200. The stacked field would intimidate most if they were against it, but Yugi/Faro isn't, mainly since nothing is strong enough to overwhelm his magician girl, but while not intimidated, he's wary. Rebecca looks at Yugi's wary form and smirks slightly. What with your smirk, Rebecca? I would assume you're not done yet, are you? With a light chuckle, she smiles. You're right, Yugi. This isn't the end, since I was just giving those watching a moment to pick up their jaws from the floor before they drop there again. Her words cause some confusion to appear on Yugi's face, but before he can speak, Rebecca starts. First of all, I'll have Lyra use her effect to destroy your most recently played face down at the cost of forcing her to go into defense position. On the field, Lyra seems to concentrate on her scepter before raising it aloft. In a flash of blue light, a beam is sent towards the face down. In a moment it's destroyed a second later, but Lyra's form takes a knee from the exertion of the act. The face-down card was revealed to be a magic cylinder, one of Yugi's staples, but once it's gone, Rebecca continues to duel. Now it's time to show the world. I now tune Lyra with Felis to synchro summon Judgment, the Dragon of Heaven. Her words preclude the historically first recorded usage of synchro summoning. Felis from her position jumps to beside Lyra. The pair share a look of determination before Felis places her arm under Lyra's to help her up in her exhausted form. They both leap into the sky while their forms become see-through. The pair separate in the air and their forms dissolve into 4 shining stars and 4 green technological rings. Each ring orbits a star in a uniform pattern, and a flash of blinding white light occurs, appearing as a giant and grown-up version of the dragonling. The size of the dragon is comparable to a plane, so it hovers behind Rebecca off the blimp. Judgment, the Dragon of Heaven Light, Dragon Synchro Effect, ATK, 3000/def, 2600. The sight of the giant dragon causes everyone here but me and Rebecca to be intimidated, maybe because it's got the same strength as Blue Eyes. Now to continue, I'm not done. I'll tune my Lightsworn Dragonling with Minerva to synchro summon Michael, the Arch Lightsworn. Minerva walks over to the dragonling, who is looking at the great dragon with envy. Minerva pets the dragonling and seems to whisper something into its ear. The pair lock eyes and the dragonling nods with enthusiasm before running into the air. It runs in the air as if it is solid before becoming a wireframe in form and appearing as 4 stars. Minerva is right behind the dragonling before becoming a trio of green rings which guide the 4 stars. Their combination starts to produce a light akin to a warm sun in hue, and in a flash of light a golden armored man with armored golden wings appears. His form is high in the air and he starts to fall like a skydiver. Michael, the Archlightsworn Light, Dragon Synchro Effect, ATK, 2600/def, 2000. Everyone's attention is on the golden armored angel, so they don't notice Rebecca adding a card to her hand from the deck, but their focus is taken again as they hear a heaven-shaking roar. Its origin is revealed when Judgment, the dragon of heaven, flies like a beast possessed towards the Archlightsworn. In a fluid moment like the pair were part of a whole, the dragon and angel collide in the air before leveling out to reveal their combined form of the Archsworn standing on top of the dragon with his blade raised aloft, radiating his sun-like hues against the dark clouds around. The rider and mount take their place behind Rebecca and act like a beacon on her field, as if challenging all the evil in the world to fuck around and find out. Everyone is silent from the display, but I can tell one person is sweating bullets. The dark magician girl is looking very nervous, maybe because she practices dark magic. Now I'll have Michael attack your dark magician girl using his blade of sunlight. Dark magician girl looks scared as she and everyone watch as the Archlightsworn raises his blade, which illuminates with his sun-like light, but before he swings, Yugi activates a trap. I'll activate my magical hats. This allows me to hide my dark magician girl under one of 4 hats for you to choose from. Magical hats, anime, spell/quick. In a hurry, dark magician girl waves her wand and from it, 4 magical hats appear above Yugi's monster zones. She then points her wand down. This creates a smoke screen on Yugi's monster zones before the hats descend. After the smoke screen fades, the 4 hats are left on the field. Rebecca, without missing a beat, points to the leftmost hat of the bunch. Michael follows her direction and swings his blade in a downward strike. This produces a slash of condensed light to fly from him to the hat, and the hat in question fizzles into a pile of smoke and pixels, but with no magician underneath. Rebecca isn't happy at that, but she knows this only made the chances of taking dark magician girl out increase from 1 in 4 to 1 in 3. Judgment, attack the middle hat. The dragon listens to her but simply sends its tail to smash down on the hat. Again the hat is popped like a balloon with smoke and pixels, but this time as the dragon's tail is returned from the strike, it now has an addition added onto it. Sorry Rebecca, but you attacked the magical hat, which was hiding my trap. Spellbinding Circle, this debilitates your dragon while it's applied to it. Spellbinding Circle, trap/continuous. The circle grows in size before moving to the dragon's torso. It then surrounds it like a green ring from the tuning process, with the dragon acting as the star. The dragon roars in rage at the restraint, and Rebecca closes her eyes in thought before speaking. I activate Michael's effect. For the cost of 1000 life points he can banish any face-up card on the field, removing your trap. Michael raises his blade to the sky and generates another blade of solar light, but this time he turns and swings the blade towards the circle, binding his ally. In a shower of light and sparks the spell is broken, freeing the dragon. Rebecca's LP, 2000 greater than 1000. With that, I'll end my turn. When this happens, the effects of the dragon then Michael happens, so I have to banish the first top 4 cards of my deck and then send the next 3 to the graveyard. She does this. She flinches when she sees one of the cards. She banishes, but when she goes to the cards being sent to the graveyard, she tilts her head and then separates 1 card from the 3. This is curious even more so when she waves at the judge. Him being confused, he comes to her and listens to her. After a second, he returns to his place and speaks. One of the cards she just sent to the graveyard has an effect to be placed face down on the field instead. To show that she's not breaking any rules, she required my confirmation of the card effect. It is legal, so the duel may continue, with the card face down. The judge's words cause Yugi to focus on the card, since it must be powerful if it requires confirmation. He looks at his deck, closes his eyes and draws. He looks at the card and then smiles. First of all, I'll summon Gamma the Magnet Warrior to the field. At his words, a pink metallic creature with a pair of white lights for eyes appears on the field. Gamma the Magnet Warrior, Earth, Rock/Normal, ATK, 1500/def, 1800. Now I'll reveal where my Dark Magician Girl was then activated from my hand. The spell card Magical Dimension. The originally rightmost hat flips over to reveal the Dark Magician Girl, but when she appears she's carrying what seems to be a very heavy coffin and places it onto the field behind Gamma. Magical Dimension allows my Dark Magician Girl to place one of my monsters within the coffin, then with a wave of her wand make another monster appear from my hand. Gamma is placed within the coffin with little resistance. Once it's in there, its form disappears like the coffin was a gateway into another space. The coffin is closed, and the Dark Magician Girl waves her wand before a flash comes from the coffin. The coffin shakes once then twice before the coffin's door is opened slowly. In a dramatic flare a purple-robed figure appears wielding a long emerald staff. Dark Magician Dark, Spellcaster / Normal. ATK, 2500 / Def, 2000. The appearance of Yugi's ace monster bolsters the peanut gallery, but Yugi isn't finished. Now the final effect of the magical dimension. While the coffin is open, Dark Magician Girl and her mentor can use its energy to eliminate one monster on the field. Let's take out your dragon. His words cause focus to return to the coffin, which is now flanked by the pair of magicians. They cross their wands over the coffin and with their other hands point towards the dragon. The coffin amasses dark energy before sending it flying at the dragon. Seeing the dark energy mass, Michael does a preemptive strike at the mass. He jumps from the head of the great dragon and goes to cut the mass or at least weaken the blast, but as it approaches he realizes he couldn't prepare enough light energy to stave off the mass in time to block the blow and would have to take the hit for the dragon. He accepts this outcome. But his companion intercedes. When the mass strikes Michael, one of the dragon's tails moves to block the strike, protecting the Archlightsworn. Before his eyes he watches as the dark energy starts to turn the tail to ashes as it corrodes the dragon's form. The corrosion is rapid and unrelenting, but before the dragon fades it looks eyes with Michael before roaring to the heavens with its last breath before fully decaying and turning into pixels. Michael turns towards the magicians with fury in his eyes and his wings fully spread in a stance against them. Seeing this, Yugi looks at his hand, then comes to a decision. I'll place my magicians under the hats, then shuffle them so you can't tell where each is. The hats descend again, but with only 2 monsters on the field and 2 hats, there will be a takedown, but it's now random. I have to end my turn. At this Rebecca smiles and draws. She looks at the card with some concentration before playing it face down. Michael attacked the rightmost hat. Michael raises his sword and with trained precision he sends a slash of light at the hat. The shriek of a female is heard. The hat contains Dark Magician Girl. The hat hides her destruction, but the result is visible when Yugi's life points decrease for the first time this duel. Yugi's LP, 4,000 greater than 3,700. Rebecca isn't massively happy at that she didn't get Yugi's ace, but she goes and does her end turn process by discarding 3 cards. This time a light appears from the trio of cards. She goes to examine it before shrugging and saying, due to the effect of Wolf, Lightsworn Beast, they're summoned instead of being sent to the graveyard. Wolf, Lightsworn Beast Light, Beast Warrior / Effect, ATK, 2100 / Def, 300. A wolf beastman with fur white as snow appears in a black-like light. The light isn't darkness itself, it's just black the color. He wields a 2-headed axe single-handed and has a claw made of light in the other. His appearance is anticlimactic since the Beast Warrior appears as Yugi draws his card. He reveals it immediately. I activate Card of Sanctity, allowing us to both draw until our hands are 6. Card of Sanctity, Anime, Spell. With a refilled hand Yugi continues his turn. From my hand, I equip my Dark Magician with his magic formula. This increases his attack by 700. Magic formula, spell / equip. Dark Magician, ATK, 2500 greater than 3200. With the strongest monster on the field, Yugi doesn't go straight for the win but places 1 card face down before directing his magician to attack Wolf for the win. Dark Magician, Dark Magic attack towards Wolf. His words cause the magician to take the pose to attack the Beast Warrior, but Rebecca reacts before it attacks. I activate my trap card Twilight Cloth. This card allows me to remove some Lightsworn from the grave to increase the attack and defense of my monster by 200 per card removed for the turn. I'll remove 6 from play for an increase of 1200. Twilight Cloth, Trap. Wolf's form takes on a dark sheen as his form becomes empowered. Wolf, Lightsworn Beast, ATK, 2100 greater than 3300. This new strength causes the Dark Magician to pause since attacking the beast would bring retaliation, ending himself. Yugi smiles before directing his magician to attack Michael. The Archlightsworn closes his eyes in acceptance and allows the dark energy to strike at him. It causes his form to decay, but before he fades away, he raises his sword to the sky and roars like his dragon. Rebecca's LP, 1000 greater than 400. As his roar echoes, this causes Rebecca's graveyard to start glowing every color of the rainbow. I activate Michael's last effect. When he's defeated in battle, he allows me to send as many Lightsworn as I want back to the deck while giving me 300 life points for each I send. At this point, I have 7 Lightsworn in my graveyard. I'll send 3 back to the deck. Rebecca's LP, 400 greater than 1200. Rebecca recovers from the brink and Yugi's already attacked this turn with his magician, so he places 1 card down before ending his turn, allowing Rebecca to draw to 7 cards. From my hand, I'll end at this, I special summon from my hand Judgment Dragon. At her declaration her graveyard starts to glow again with the colors of 4 of the lightsworn within. Their light flies out to form a diamond pattern where there's a void between the 4 diamonds of light. This void seems to shimmer like rippling water and from it appears a dragon similar to the previous dragon, but this one doesn't look as wild as the last one, this one seems more refined and focused. Judgment Dragon Light, Dragon/Effect, ATK, 3000/Def, 2600. The appearance of another dragon which dwarfs the field spooks most, but Rebecca smiles before speaking again. Now I use Judgment Dragon's effect. At the cost of 1000 life points, it destroys all other cards on the field. Her declaration makes everyone present freeze up. But the dragon in question looks at everything in front of it and roars at it in indignation as if everything in front of it isn't pure for heaven's light, so they must be cast aside. It raises its claw and swings it down in a simple action, and this causes tears of light to appear as if stricken by the dragon to appear on every card on the field, even face-down spells and traps. Everyone, even the Dark Magician, is shocked at its raw power as everything on both their fields fades away besides the dragon itself. Now with everything on the field gone, I'll special summon from my hand Punishment Dragon. In her words, the pattern of diamonds takes on different hues as the monsters they represent change to those removed from play. Again the void in the pattern ripples like water and from it emerges the same dragon as before, but this form is like a mirror to the Judgment Dragon. The first is restrained and deliberate, but the second one is akin to instinct and wildness personified. Punishment Dragon Dark, Dragon/Effect, ATK, 3000/Def, 2600. With the appearance of the pair of dragons, Rebecca looks at Yugi, who's sweating since he was outplayed. The board wipe and the pair of dragons equal in strength to Blue Eyes make him panic. Rebecca sighs before chuckling and speaking. Can you defend against the dragons, Yugi? With a face full of acceptance, he nods and says, I can't block them. At his words, she nods before shocking most people here and around the world before placing her hand over her deck and surrendering the duel to Yugi. The pair of dragons on the field look at their mistress, one with reluctant annoyance and one with serene acceptance. The Judgment Dragon even nods at her decision. Both of their giant forms start to phase away into pixels as the system shuts down at the surrender. Rebecca Hawkins surrendered. Yugi Moto wins. Chapter 41, Chapter 39 Deals and the Blue Maiden. The ending for the duel was kind of what I expected what would happen. I can tell a deck which is still played in modern Yu-Gi-Oh with access to synchro summoning would overwhelm a early gen deck like Yugi's. I will say there was possibly a chance for his win, since early cards were broken and the crippled LP amount would hamper a Lightsworn deck since the big dragons require a life point payment of 1000. Well, the duels ended, so the results speak for themselves. To be honest, I wouldn't want to give Yugi / the Pharaoh such a powerful card since he would abuse it like a farmer does to a cow. I start to walk towards the elevator since the next duel should be drawn soon and I don't want to miss it. As I reach the door of the elevator, I heard the words of a certain female duelist. Where are you going, shady guy? I turn around to see that Rebecca is standing a few paces away from me with Yugi, who is also looking lightly confused at Rebecca. You should know that isn't my name, Miss Hawkins, but I would assume you believe we have more business to discuss. With some indignation she crosses her arms and pouts. You were about to leave without giving Yugi the card. At her words I frown and pause. What is she talking about? I remember that deal you made was for Mr. Moto to defeat you. He didn't, you surrendered in the end. It seems pretty clear-cut that he shouldn't get the card as a result. I say in a bland neutral tone towards the child. But he did beat me, she says with a smile like a cat. In the end he won the duel, so technically he beat me. Didn't matter the context, just the result. This causes everyone in earshot to pause, since though vague rules and defined definitions, she set up a plan to get Yugi a powerful card for free. One problem about that. I will say, that is some clever linguistic maneuvering, but just one thing you overlooked, my dear. I never verbally agreed to the deal, I only revealed the card in question. You assumed that meant I agreed to the deal you made single-handedly without my consent. I'm not obligated to hand over the card. His words are like dumping a bucket of water onto Rebecca since she thought she played him. The look on Yugi's emotional state is in a small flux since he just lost the duel but was allowed to continue in the tournament. Next, Rebecca pulled him here with no explanation before saying he's gonna get the card. Then I just say no. His face is torn between disappointment and confusion. Also, the moment I give Yugi a card, Sito would be on my back about it, wanting something of equal value to the dark magical circle, but that card might be something I can't just give away. At my words, this makes me feel everyone's eyes on me, even a set of eyes though the security cameras. Rebecca is the first one to speak up. Couldn't you just give him the card as a favor from me? This catches my attention, but I smirk slightly. Sadly, you already owe me a favor for giving you the deck, but I am willing to have them owe me a favor for the card. My words cause the pair to look slightly shocked at my idea. I won't ask for much when I cash in the favor also, since giving you a single card isn't of the same worth as giving a whole new deck. Think of it as a tiny favor. Yugi turns his head to the side, probably conferring with the pharaoh before sighing and saying, "Okay, then I'll owe you a favor." I take out the card and present it to Yugi, but when he's about to grab it I take it out of his reach. "Both of you. I trust Yugi, but your friend might try and pull a fast one since you're not the same person." My words causes Yugi and the pharaoh to both have faces of shock. I eye the spirit fully and can see on his face he's confused that another person can see him, but I hear him agree to the favor as well, but slightly reluctantly. At that I hand the card over to Yugi, who slips it into his deck. With my business concluded I go towards the elevator. I take it alone since I would presume Rebecca would go with Yugi and his friends. The elevator is silent and the doors open, but instead of being the main room it leads to what seems to be a server room. Standing tall and imposing is Sito Kaiba, who looks at me with annoyance and determination. I approach him with a smile, half guessing what he wants. "I don't need you to tell me, you want that card I talked about, which would be great for you. I assume you redirected me here so you can get it." The smirk on his face tells me I'm right, but I continue. "Also, you're someone who wouldn't like to have favors handing over you, so you would prefer something tangible and direct for the trade. Let me guess, more stocks would be out of the question, so maybe a blank check." Sito has enough. "Stop, be so banal. You already have a price in mind. You wouldn't have talked about the idea in the open unless you intended for me to hear it, so what do you want for the card?" I turn to the side and smile at him. "Oh, something very simple that I believe you wouldn't care about. I want the ownership of the island where Kaiba Corp's original HQ was built on, well, I mean after the tournament, since it's currently housing the finals tower." My price causes him to look at me with squinting eyes, evaluating the deal. One card versus an island covered in rubble. "Show me the card and I'll think about it." At this I smile, before tilting my head with a realization. For it I just need to check something. Can you show me a blue eyes for a second?" My request annoys Sito Kaiba, but he sees little point not to. He takes his deck and reveals a blue eyes. He even hands it to me. I can see why, since there's a transparent film on the card which makes it unterrible. When it's in my hand I use my spiritual essence to say, "Your wait is over, Kazara. Let's reunite the keeper of the blue eyes and their destined maiden." I pump some spiritual power into the card and feel a card appear behind the blue eyes white dragon card. With a smile I hand the cards to Sito, who is confused, but he takes his dragon back, but he feels that the back of the card isn't the film, so he pushes the cards away to reveal the card behind his dragon. Maiden with eyes of blue light, spellcaster, tuner, effect, ATK, 0/def, 0. Unaware to Sito behind him, hugging him like Miquella does to Tiradan, is a white-haired woman with blue eyes which seem to pierce the darkness, smiling. Reading the card, Sito smirks and says, "Take the dusty old island. Once I am crowned the best duelist in the world, there it would be left to rot anyway as a monument to the past Kaiba Corp." Both me and him have an electronic contract written right there for the deal, and we return to the main room as the spheres are being drawn. The guard has just grabbed a sphere, looking at it to confirm before throwing it hard towards a muscle-bound man who seems to be a weightlifter. He catches it and smiles before flexing and showing the sphere, which depicts a 3D cast of a flexed arm with budging muscles and veins. The first duelist to duel next is Sergey Ivanov. The machine spits out another sphere which the guard looks at. He looks around the room before throwing it towards a group of people. Within that group a white-haired boy catches it, surprising everyone, even him it seems. He looks at the sphere and sees it depicts a 3D coin. One side has a cup of tea while the other depicts an ominous ring. The second duelist is Bakura Ryu. Can both contestants make your way to the arena outside? Chapter 42, Chapter 40, Muscles vs. Curses. Hearing Bakura would duel some random guy feels pity for him, but even I know, even with how bloodthirsty he is, he wouldn't risk blowing his cover this early against the pharaoh. He might be maniacal and crazy, but he isn't an idiot, so he shouldn't pull him into a shadow game. I think. It's not like I can do anything without causing him to form a grudge towards me. Yami, Bakura isn't someone you want to have on your back. Leave him for the pharaoh to banish for a while, keeping his attention. I just get a new plate and start stuffing my face. It isn't long before a pair of figures who I never wanted to meet come walking toward me. Pegasus and Patches come towards me while smiling. I start to converse with them, massively curious how they got along, and I find out why quickly. When they met, Patches spun his skullduggery and thieving as treasure hunting and misadventures. Who knew a man of many stories and a man who loves stories would get along? The weirdest thing is that Pegasus, while taking them with a grain of salt, is believing them mostly, since Patches is great at weaving a narrative while focusing on the key parts while using the rest to add flair. Hell, I'm listening as well, and if I didn't already know that his claim that he fought Pinwheel in the catacombs was bogus, I would have believed him. He's too smart to face the cartwheel skeletons without sending some sap before him. His stories are entertaining enough that they fill the time until the feed of the screens in the room presents the arena again. It doesn't take long before the pair start their duel. Sergey's LP, 4000. Bakura's LP, 4000. Let's start this duel off with a face-down monster and a face-down. Your turn. The muscled man does a standard T formation for their first turn, letting Bakura start. Still feinting his possession in his natural voice, Bakura speaks, "Okay, then I'll draw, and from that draw I'll change the scenery. I'll play Terraform." Terraform, spell. When it's played on the field, the card is revealed, and from it, a holographic light net springs forth and encases everyone in the blimp in a sphere made from the net lines. From my deck, I'll find and then play Dark Sanctuary to the field. At his words, the holographic light sphere takes on a purple-like color before each of the gaps of the net flash that new purple light before revealing a new landscape of a dark castle shrouded in a purple fog and a red clouded sky which has eyes and mouths visible within. Dark Sanctuary, spell/field. The sight of the field causes some of the younger people to shiver at the card's depictions, but anyone aware of Lovecraftian horror would find it tame. Oh, that just reminded me of the 6 entities cards. It makes me question their spiritual strength since they're based on the Cthulhu mythos gods. Back to the duel. To my field, I'll summon my Headless Knight, in attack mode, and have it go attack your face down. A small portion of the purple fog pilfers onto the field, and stepping from it like a phantom is a silver-armored knight but with no helmet or head. The knight charges in fury and strikes down at the face down. Headless Knight Earth, Fiend/Normal, ATK, 1450/Def, 1700. The knight's blade strikes true, but from its position it seems to become stuck in the body of something. It becomes apparent when an annoyed skittering sound is heard as a large furry being appears from the face down, the sword hitting its belly but at the same time seemingly not doing it any harm. Giant Rat Earth, Beast/Effect, ATK, 1400/Def, 1450. Internally I'm laughing at the chances of a pair of monsters battling while having that 50-point add-on, but the look on Bakura's face is one of bemusement. I'll just end my turn by playing 2 cards face down. Sergey goes to start and draws a card, but once he draws, Bakura speaks again. I activate my Destiny board. His starting card for his endgame stratagem makes its appearance. Meaning this game has now got a major time crunch. Destiny board, trap/continuous. That just means I have to end this quickly, and with what I just drew this should do it. I summon from my hand Monk Fighter. Appearing from the fog on foot as if arriving at the outskirts of the castle is a man in orange robes with white hair. He looks determined but his muscles seem not well developed. Monk Fighter Earth, Rock/Effect, ATK, 1300/Def, 1000. The appearance of the monk confuses most since he doesn't seem remarkable, but Sergey starts to speak. From my hand I special summon my master monk by training my monk fighter for the fight. As his words are said, the monk fighter on the field starts to age rapidly, with their muscles bulging up and becoming hard as steel. When it seems he's at his peak he flexes, and his outfit explodes, revealing a scared torso of abs. Master Monk Earth, Rock/Effect, ATK, 1900/Def, 1000. Lastly I'll hand my monk a legendary black belt to show off his mastery of martial arts. The rope belt of the master monk starts to darken and thicken before becoming a proper martial arts belt which wraps around his waist, emanating energy. Legendary black belt, spell/equip. I'll swap my giant rat to attack position before having my master monk go to take out your knight. The monk advances at rapid speed towards the knight. It even leaps into the air about to kick the knight's form, but mid-air he becomes frozen in place as the many gazes of the Dark Sanctuary leer at his form as if apprising him. Dark Sanctuary makes it so if you want to attack, a coin is flipped. If it is heads, the attack is stopped, and you take half the attack of your monster. Bakura presses a button on his duel disc and a coin appears between the pair of duelists before going skyward. It flips too many times to count before settling on the ground with a result. Heads. The eyes of the Dark Sanctuary glow and a shadow form of the Master Monk appears. It turns towards Sergey and goes to tackle him, which causes him some damage. Once he takes the damage he knits his eyebrows before speaking. I'll have my Master Monk attack again due to his effect. The monk, now free of the dark sanctuary, goes to quickly recover speed towards the knight, but the eyes of the sanctuary are everywhere, and his form is frozen, this time an inch from striking the knight. Bakura activates the coin function again. The coin is sent flying and this time lands quicker than before. Tails. At this result, Bakura isn't happy, but he's fine with the result of losing some minor life points since it doesn't matter much, but the look on Sergey's face says otherwise as he speaks. Due to the effect of the black belt, you take additional damage equal to the defense of your monster. The realization hits Bakura as he sees the dark sanctuary's eyes blink, which releases the master monk. In a blitz of speed and power, the headless knight is ripped limb from limb by the master, and the last part of the knight is kicked straight at Bakura to inflict the damage. Sergey's LP, 4000 greater than 3050. Bakura's LP, 4000 greater than 1850. The harmful strike causes Bakura to recoil, but he quickly watches as the muscular duelist points at his giant rat. Now furball, attack him directly. His words cause the rat to get on all four limbs before scurrying towards Bakura. Again the eyes of the dark sanctuary seem to gaze at the rat and makes it freeze in its tracks, determining its fate. Bakura presses the duel disc again for the third time and the coin is tossed, and the results come quickly. Tails. Again the eyes of the dark sanctuary blink, releasing the rat from the suspension. This allows it to continue to attack Bakura directly. With a slash of its claw it hits him before returning to its monster zone. Bakura, 1850 greater than 450. Being reduced to such a low value, I can picture the peanut gallery of Yugi and his friends commenting on Bakura's situation. Oh yeah, they still think he's currently unpossessed. But with Sergey's final monster attack he nods before ending his turn. This causes Bakura's destiny board to materialize beside him, and from the fog of the dark sanctuary a pair of cyan flame spirits appear, each carrying a flame depicting a letter. Currently, only D and E are present, but with their appearance Bakura draws. He quickly looks at his hand and forms a game plan for the tricky situation. From my hand, I'll play Graceful Charity. Graceful Charity, spell. He draws more, and with the cards he draws his smile becomes prevalent on his face as he discards a pair of monsters from his hand. Now with those in the grave, I can special summon from my hand my Dark Necrofear in defense position. From Bakura's graveyard a trio of pale flames fly out as if in fear, running away from their greatest fear. They wander in the fog of the dark sanctuary, their positions obscured by the fog but visible due to the light they produce. Without warning or indication, one of the flames gets snuffed out, and a second later that patch of fog thins out to reveal nothing. The other flames become more erratic, but it happens again and again, taking them out. After a second the fog increases in density, becoming semi-solid. Emerging from the fog is a pale blue-skinned bald woman with elongated features akin to a mix between a goblin and elf in unique and mismatched armor. She cradles the destroyed form of a doll in her hands and smiles maliciously at the monk and rat. Dark Necrofear, Dark Fiend/Effect, ATK, 2200/Def, 2800. Her appearance is daunting, and her defense is just as daunting to Sergey, since he knows with her on the field his chance of winning in time is made much harder. With her appearance on the field, Bakura has a small smile common to the normal Bakura, but he places a card face down before ending his turn. Sergey draws his card and frowns, but he shrugs before setting it face down as a monster on the field and placing two cards face down in his spell and trap zone, leaving his hand empty. Lastly, he repositions his rat into defense position before ending his turn. This makes another letter form on the destiny board, making it now read out DEA. Still with his smile, Bakura draws and looks at the card before playing face down his own spell/trap zone and ending his turn, knowing he just has to wait to win. Sergey draws, looks at his card and laughs. This disturbs Bakura's smile, but curiously Sergey places the card face down in his spell/trap zone before speaking. I flipped the monster I played last turn. The card on the field slowly flips over like a trapdoor. When it is raised fully it now depicts a grayish-green sphere holding a creature with a dirty tooth Jin and a single red eye. In an unceremonious style the sphere just pops out of the card and rolls to the ground and is now looking at Bakura with its grin tilted 30 degrees, being off-center. In a chatter of teeth, the creature within the jar explodes from it as a gray blur and jumps and bites at Bakura's hand, coating the cards in an illusion of red slime before shooting over to Sergey's hand and then rebounding to return to its jar, grinning evilly but satisfied as if just had a snack. Morphing Jar Earth, Rock/Effect, ATK, 700/Def, 600. Its effect makes us both discard our hands before drawing back to 5. He says this as he draws 5 cards since he was empty. This causes Bakura to grumble but discard and redraw. Now to take down the castle I activate the field card, Catapult Zone. Behind Sergey, a militia of soldiers appear from the fog rolling a pair of catapults. The pair of catapults are worked on by the soldiers and start slinging rocks skywards towards the dark sanctuary. Catapult zone, spell/field. In a siege against the castle, the walls crumple and collapse before the spires of the dark castle fall. With their removal, the dark sky starts to fade, clearing the sky of the nightmarish depictions of eyes and mouths. Both Bakura and his dark necrophere become uncomfortable due to the loss of the field card. Sergey continues though. Now from my hand, I activate United We Stand and equip it to my master monk. At his words, Bakura thinks quickly and points to his face down. In response, I activate my face down mystical space typhoon and destroy your legendary black belt. In a flash of actions, a small storm appears and quickly goes and strikes at the master monk. From the lightning strike, the master monk's belt is the target, so it burns up before fading away, but the master monk looks like he's now empowered by the strike, as his form is now coursing with red lightning, becoming stronger and buffer. United We Stand, spell/equip. Mystical Space Typhoon, spell/quick play. Master Monk, ATK, 1900 greater than 4300. Doesn't matter, I'll have my Master Monk attack your dark necrophere, then attack directly for the win. Master Monk go. At his words, the massively swollen monk charges forth like a force of nature, and in a blur of speed it appears on the other side of the blue-skinned woman. It wraps arms around her waist from behind and German suplexes the fiend into the field. She disappears from the blow in a show of lights. He then stands up and then stares at Bakura with an evil grin on his face. He goes to tackle the possessed boy, but as he goes to attack, a trio of women in teal robes appear in a triangle formation around the boy. Each woman wields a talisman and they form a barrier around Bakura, protecting him. I won't be losing this turn since I activate in response to the second attack by activating Wabaku to protect me from any damage this turn. The appearance of the woman causes Sergey to be confused, since doesn't that card also protect monsters, so why didn't he play it to protect his monster? With little left to do this turn, he goes to end his turn. This causes the destiny board to gain its fourth letter, now reading out DEET. This catches everyone's attention, but another surprising thing occurs as the master monk on Sergey's field becomes still before walking over to Bakura's field. This confuses everyone, but as the master monk turns around to face Sergey, it turns out their eyes are now just black orbs with no pupil. It takes a stance, but it's very stiff, as if mechanical. The truth becomes apparent as, like a ghost, a figure of a blue-skinned fiend is present with a puppet handle. From it, thin transparent strings connect the fiend to the monk as if a puppet and puppet master. The effect of dark necrophere, it allows me to take control of the monster which destroyed it at the end phase. So you monk is now working for me, Bakura exclaims in his victory. Seeing the field situation with Bakura controlling his monk going into their turn, he knows his field and knows his situation but can do little to nothing as Bakura draws for his turn. I'll summon a face-down monster and have your master monk clear your field. At Bakura's command, the puppet monk in a flash of speed and power grabs onto the morphing jar and throws it like a shot put at the rat. Like a meteoric impact, it causes a large impact. Surprisingly, from the strike the morphing jar seems fine, but its eye is spinning in its jar from the blow. I activate Catapult Zone. By sending a rock-type monster from my deck to the grave, I can save a rock-type monster on the field from destruction. Also, you activate the Giant Rat's effect, allowing me to summon a monster from my deck to replace it. Appearing is another monk fighter. It looks ready for the fight, but the appearance of the master monk on the other side of the field causes it to flinch. Seeing that Sergey's field is still populated, Bakura is annoyed, even though it's not the worst situation since the master monk is still so powerful due to the board's presence, so he ends his turn. This allows Sergey to try and return. He draws. Before analyzing the cards in his hand, he comes up with a way to get rid of the mad monk, but he realizes that's all he can do before losing. If he takes out the mad monk, yes, it would remove the biggest threat on the field, but it would free up the last spell/trap zone for the destiny board since dark necrophere is blocking its completion, so he can't remove it on his turn. I'll summon a monster face down before playing from my hand the spell card Kaminote Blow. Kaminote Blow, spell. I'll next have my monk fighter take out your face-down monster. The monk looks at the field before charging towards the face-down. It does a leap into a downward kick into the card, and from the card a pair of sickly hands, a gaunt face appears as if partly phased into the card and tries to claw at the monk. Earthbound Spirit Earth, Fiend/Normal, ATK, 500/Def, 2000. Seeing this, the monk uses the recoil of the attack to leap back to its monster zone on Sergey's field. Due to monk fighter's effect, I take no damage, but due to Kaminote Blow it destroys your monster regardless. With his words, the spirit seems to start glowing as when the monk struck him, he filled the spirit with ki, setting it to burst out from it from within. In a burst of light, the spirit is returned to the earth and with it gone, Sergey ends his turn. This allows Bakura to draw, and with little fanfare he orders the mad monk to attack the jar and the weaker monk on the field. The jar is smashed into pixels quickly, but when the mad master monk initiates a flurry of blows with the monk fighter, which results in sending the monk fighter reeling, but it's still alive a small distance away, the master goes to continue the battle but is blocked as from the sky a block of stone appears to stop the mad master monk, ending the battle as catapult zone was used to protect the fighter. With little else to do, Bakura summons a face-down monster before ending his turn, allowing Sergey to smile since he thinks he's won. I draw. I'll flip summon my golem sentry, which has an effect to return one of your monsters on the field to the hand. I'll use it to regain my master monk. The card on the field flips over to reveal a cobblestone golem with its most distinct features being that its main body is that of a doorframe and it's wielding a two-handed poleaxe. Once it appears it points at the mad monk before throwing its poleaxe towards the monk. Golem Sentry Earth, Rock/Effect, ATK, 800/Def, 1800. The poleaxe sails through the air and flies over the head of Mad Master Monk. Its flight cuts through all the transparent lines holding the monk like a puppet. Like a puppet, once its strings are cut it starts to collapse towards the ground into a heap. Its form disappears and is added to Sergey's hand, but it doesn't stay there as just as quickly he reveals it. I tribute summon my monk fighter to special summon my master monk back to my field. Again, the monk on the field gets buff and older, turning from a monk fighter into a master monk. With grand gusto Sergey speaks more. I'll have my master monk go and attack your face-down monster before attacking you directly. The master monk with great power leaps into the air and punches down at the face-down monster. When it does though, a transparent grasp rises from the card and catches the fist of the master monk. Quickly he retreats as the face-down monster is revealed to be a spirit-like entity made up of glowing lines akin to the northern lights. It looks golem-like, and it interlocks its fingers creating a barrier of interwoven lights as a rudimentary barrier. Protector of the Sanctuary Earth, Fiend/Effect, ATK, 1100/Def 1900. With just the appearance of this monster, all hope within Sergey of winning evaporates. He knows this since he knows he has no way to take it out in time until the end step in which Destiny Board would complete ending the duel. With resignation, Sergey lets out a sigh before nodding, placing his hand on his deck and saying, I concede. The end of the duel is called, and the announcement is made on the screen. Sergey Ivanov has surrendered. Bakura Raya wins. Chapter 43, Chapter 41 Disturbing Customs. Watching Bakura defeat the Musselman was honestly more interesting than I thought it would be, but that's mainly due to the plays of Sergey, who had to be active at Bakura's passive play style. But I will admit Bakura did a great play which placed Sergey within a corner by taking control of his buffed up master monk with Dark Necrofear. I don't care anymore since I continue to munch on some food. It doesn't take a long time for the main cast to reconvene into the main room. I do notice that Bakura is still holding up his act even though his creepy as fuck deck has been showed to them. Meh, I am really curious how that guy possessing Bakura keeps getting away with his facade so many times. Hell, the Pharaoh should be able to smell the dark magic coming off him. Maybe he can't since his spirit form has no nose. Like, did his mummification strip him of his senses when in spirit form later? That would also explain how brain dead he acts sometimes. That inadvertently makes me remember all the stuff they did to their dead and it makes me shudder. This catches Miquella's attention since I can tell he's bored at the banquet where he can't eat anything or speak to anyone besides his sister. What's wrong? Oh, just simply contemplating how cruel how people will go in the name of their religion. This makes Miquella's spiritual form to give me a side eye which I can tell is just asking for me to explain. Well, the religion that are the source of all the God cards in play from this world had some crazy idea about death and divinity. The main thing is that their ruler was the personification of their chief god on the earth. This makes the demigods who are listening in, since they have nothing better to do, look perplexed since to them their only ruler was Marika, who in all terms and purposes was a goddess straight up. Now, that might not be the weirdest part to you lot, but their main religion also says that their chief god was killed by their brother before being ripped apart. He was patched again by his wife into a grafted form before being revived as the god of the afterlife while still technically being dead. Godwin speaks up at these words which perplex everyone else. So their mythos have it so they're like those who live in death. It doesn't make the most sense, but why does that disturb you? This causes most of the demigods' attention to return to me from Godwin. Well, as I said, the leader acts as his personification, the earth, but when he dies they treat the myth behind the chief god as what to do to the body, so they rip out its organs and body parts, replacing them with alternatives before placing them to rest surrounded by their own body parts just out of reach. This includes the brain and genitalia. This causes most of the demigods to be slightly disgusted at the desecration of the dead. For them the dead should be buried in a catacomb with a root of the Erd tree to return to the Erd tree before being reborn anew. My attention is pulled from the disturbing thoughts as the machine at the center point of the room is activated. The guard at the machine activates it to produce the first sphere for the contestants. It doesn't take long as a sphere enters the guard's grasp. He inspects it before throwing it into the crowd gently. The sphere flies in the air and is caught by a boy with dark maroon hair styled in a ponytail. He looks at the sphere in curiosity as it depicts heavy tone with a front cover depicting a castle with a shooting star above said castle. The first contestant for the next duel is Leon von Schroeder. Looking at him I remember that he's here and pray to every merciful being I don't duel him, and whoever duels him kicks him out of the tournament. The machine spins up again and in no time another sphere is deposited from the machine. The guard takes and looks at. It takes a second for the guard to examine the sphere, but he quickly examines everyone present. He sees his target and throws it towards them. The sphere takes some speed but it's caught with little problem by a gloved hand. Said person isn't even looking towards the machine and caught the sphere as it would fly over their shoulder. The sphere in question simply depicts a enlarged numerical hash mark with curved lines making it seem it's bigger than normal at a slight angle, so it's off-center. With more examination of the sphere it turns out the lines are actually in an overlapping spiral pattern. The person turns their head and with a cheeky grin Patches smiles to everyone present. The second duelist is the man who is referred to as Patches. Ken Dash. The guard is cut off as Patches speaks over him. Hey, I am not referred to as Patches, my name is Patches, last names were a luxury where I'm from. The guard is stoic at Patches' rebuttal, but once Patches finishes he continues to speak. Can Leon von Schroeder and Patches make their ways to the arena for their duel? The pair go the respective elevators, but I place myself between Patches and his elevator by going to a table with more food. When we're about to pass I, accidentally, bump into him. We both react with silence for a moment before laughing since I'm covered in some food. He shrugs before entering his elevator. I go to my room to change and watch the duel. Within his elevator Patches takes out the note I placed in his hand and reads it. Well, isn't this interesting? By this info he's giving me this duel isn't gonna be easy like those mooks in the city. Hell, these are some interesting cards he gave me to take the kid out. He examines a trio of black cards with interest. Let's see how this pans out. This will be weird since I don't usually target children. Chapter 44, Chapter 42 Castle Heist. The pair of duelists appear on the opposite sides of the rooftop duel arena. The appearances couldn't be farther apart. One is a tall lanky figure with a disposition that can only be described as shifty or as the personification of the word misdemeanor. On the other side a young and bright-eyed posh child who is ignorant to the shadows present within the real world. The comparison could be contextualized for the duel being that of experience versus hopefulness. Both duelists ready their duel discs and the duel initiates. Leon's LP, 4000. Patches LP, 4000. Leon starts off the duel by drawing his card. I'll play 2 cards face down before summoning a face down monster. That's all I can do for this turn, sir. The cards appear face down on Leon's field before he ends his turn, but Patches himself has a face of contemplation before speaking. You don't need to call me sir, I'm not Fancy Pansy Knight. I know some people who would fit the title better but myself no. His words cause Leon to look a little intrigued, but Patches just starts his turn. Let's start with this. I'll play Allure of Darkness. Allure of Darkness, spell. Patches draws 2 before banishing a dark attribute monster from his hand. Next I'll summon to the field Marauding Captain in attack position. Due to his effect I'll also summon Meanie the Thorn to the field in attack position. A pair of cards appear on the field and from them appears a man in worn armor wielding a pair of swords. From the other is Meanie, who looks at the Marauding Captain like he's a knockoff version of Don Zalug with his dual wielding. Marauding Captain Earth, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 1200/Def, 400. Dark Scorpion, Meanie the Thorn Dark, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 1000/Def, 1800. With them there I'll have my Marauding Captain attack your face-down monster. At his words the rugged warrior charges the face-down to strike at it. The face-down card flips over halfway during its rush as a small girl's face appears peering from under the card like it was a trapdoor. She sees the knight charging her for combat and cartoonishly jumps out into the open in shock before starting to run away while carrying a basket. In a funny display, the captain charges with his blades but the little girl can just run away equal to the speed of the knight's charge, meaning no combat really happens. After a while the knight is winded while the little girl is huffing and puffing as well from the exertion. The captain in a show of exasperation shrugs his shoulders before returning to Patches' field. Little Red Riding Hood Earth, Fairy/Effect, ATK, 800/Def, 1200. The displays annoy Patches, but he sucks it up and continues to play. Well, Meanie can't destroy her, so that will stop me for the turn. You can go, kid. As he says this, he plays one card face down before ending his turn. Leon nods and draws. From my hand, I'll summon Iron Knight in ATK position. With him on the field, I'll play from my hand Gold Moon Coin. A card frame appears, and galloping from it is a mounted knight wielding a one-handed thin lance-like sword. The knight pulls at the reins of his horse to top upon Leon's field. Next above Leon appears a large golden coin which appears in the sky like the moon. The idea of such a valuable coin makes Patches blinks, but his attention is caught instead when Leon walks onto the arena. Iron Knight Earth, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 1700/Def, 700. Gold Moon Coin, Spell. The Gold Moon Coin makes it so I have to hand you the last two cards in my hand, but I can draw two for the cost. Patches shrugs, since having more cards can't be bad, but everyone sees his expression change when he sees the cards in question. You're running that card, bugger, and the other is just as pointless for me. From his words, Leon just smiles cheekily before returning to his space and drawing two cards to refill his hand. From my hand, I'll gift some glass slippers for your meanie. At his words, a card appears on the field and a podium containing some glass slippers appears within view. This catches the thief's attention. With a set of sparkle in her eyes, she goes to pounce on them. Glass slippers, spell/equip. But Patches, realizing it is a trap a mile away, reacts. I counter it with the trap Dark Illusion, to destroy the slippers. Dark Illusion, trap/counter. Meanie goes to steal the slippers, dazzled by their clarity and how they shine in the light, but when she goes to grasp at them, a shadowy cloaked figure appears and in an instant steals the slippers before her. This causes her to pause and look at this figure, who runs away with the prize before disappearing into a cloud of darkness. Meanie goes to chase after the figure for the loot, but when she's a few steps away, not looking at the podium, the glass slippers appear there again as if untouched. The slippers decay into pixels as Meanie returns to Patches' field annoyed. He talks to her. Don't worry, dear. They would have been a pain to walk around in any way. One step and boom, glass shards in the foot. This causes Meanie to go slightly pale before refocusing on the field. Well, I'll have my Iron Knight attack your marauding captain. At Leon's words, the knight controls his horse to gallop to the side to gain more area to gain speed to charge at the captain. The captain gets ready for the strike and even crosses his swords to form a basic guard, but the Iron Knight pierces through, using the weight of both his armor and the horse to break through the captain's swords and armor, defeating him. Patches LP, 4,000 greater than 3,500. With that, I'll end my turn. With his words and only one card in hand, it becomes Patches' turn, who draws to 6 cards. From my hand, I'll play the card Painful Choice. Painful Choice, Spell. The card reveals itself to Leon and me sitting in the comfortable room, groan at that broken card because I forgot it existed. Patches goes through his deck and sets out 5 cards for Leon to pick from. Funnily enough, it's one of each of the Dark Scorpion monster cards. Leon looks at them for a while before picking Chick the Yellow. Patches adds Chick the Yellow to his hand before placing the other 4 in the grave, but he smiles when he does this. Now from my hand, I'll play my second Allure of Darkness, banishing Chick to draw 2 cards. He does this and draws more, but when he sees the card he draws, he gains his signature grin. Now to play a favorite card of mine. You must be asking what would make a card so great that it becomes my favorite. Patches' words catch everyone's attention. Leon goes to speak, but Patches cuts him off. You don't need to wonder, since here he is. I summon in defense position Trusty Patches. A card frame appears on the field and from it comes the dashing rogue wielding a very long spear and a tower shield twice as big as his torso, all the while with his signature smirk. Trusty Patches Dark, Warrior, Tuner, Effect, ATK, 1200/Def, 1800. The appearance of Patches in card form causes most people to flip mental tables at the insinuation. I'm just annoyed he somehow nicked his card from me at some point, maybe when I was handing him the extra cards. Too bad I didn't give any synchros, because I'm curious. I look over to Pegasus, who has an expression I can only describe as amused while stunned. Most others in the room are just stunned. Patches starts to speak. When I summon myself to the field, he allows me to draw 3 cards from the bottom of the deck before sending one to the grave. He does so and smirks before sending a monster to the graveyard. For the rest of my turn, I'll change Meanie to defense position before ending my turn. At his words, the female thief goes on the defensive, matching the defense of Patches in 1800. Leon starts his turn and draws his card. He looks at it before shaking his head at the bad luck, since he quickly ends his turn unable to do anything. Both patches smirk at the new turn as the one with the dual disc draws to his card. He looks at it and his field before nodding. From my hand, I play the field spell card Mystic Plasma Zone. This increases all dark attribute monsters' attack by 500 for the cost of 400 defense. Then from my hand, I'll summon Donzalug. Mystical Plasma Zone, spell/field. Donzalug Dark, Warrior/effect, ATK, 1400, 1900/def, 1500, 1100. Trusty Patches, ATK, 1200, 1700/def, 1800, 1400. Meanie the Thorn, ATK, 1000, 1500, 1800 greater than 1400. Seeing the field through the screen, I realize something as I count the levels of the monsters on the field. Now I really wish I gave him a synchro. I'll change Meanie and myself to attack position. Donzalug will take out your knight while I'll send the little girl away. At Patch's words, the Don takes out one of his pistols before shooting the knight straight up without any flourish, just bang, and the knight falls off his horse from the impact. The horse spooked and goes to run away in fright. Little Red Riding Hood is scared of the murder, but her attention is grabbed as the field version of Patches places his hands on her shoulder before pointing towards Leon. She realizes something before running to Leon scared and jumps to him before becoming pixels signified as being defeated. Leon's LP, 4000 greater than 3900. Most people are stunned at this, thinking the monsters would fight, but Patches speaks. I don't hurt kids. He says this as if it's a straight fact of nature, like saying a leaf can be green or brown. Anyway, Donzalug's effect makes it so discard a card from your hand. Leon discards a card at random but speaks. My monster's effects also happen. Iron Knight allows me to add an Iron Hans to my hand from the deck, while Little Red allows me to summon a level 4 warrior or below, so I'll summon another Iron Hans from the deck. A card frame appears and from it is a scruffy old-looking man wielding a one-sided axe with the other side having a hammer head. His appearance is akin to Lumberjack from Little Red's fairy tale. He's looking around as if searching for something or reacting to a sound. Iron Hans Earth, Warrior/effect, ATK, 1200/def, 800. Iron Hans also has an effect. His is that when he's summoned, he summons an Iron Knight from the deck, but with the Knight's appearance Iron Hans gains 1000 ATK at the cost of the Iron Knight losing 1000. Iron Hans on the field takes out a block of metal from his outfit and hammers it against the hammerhead of his axe to cause a clang of noise. This seems to attract an Iron Knight who charges onto the field from out of sight. Once baited to the field, Iron Hans ambushes the knight and robs him of his swords and wielding it himself. Iron Hans, ATK, 1200, 2200. Iron Knight, ATK, 1700 greater than 700. I have experience with reoccurring knights and all, but at least I can see a weakness, lad. I'll have Meanie attack your weakened Iron Knight. Meanie, acting with maliciousness, struts towards the Iron Knight to get into range before slapping his horse's flank. The action causes the horse to go berserk and start to run off. The knight on top tries to regain control, but it just amounts to flailing helplessly while the horse runs of the field. With the knight gone, Iron Hans's attack returns to normal, but since Leon summoned the knight in defense position, no damage was dealt. Iron Hans, ATK, 2200, 1200. With that, I'll play 3 cards face down before ending my turn. Leon looks at the field with determination and draws from his deck. The sight of the card brings a smile to his face. From my hand, I use the effect of Glyph the Phantom Bird. By discarding him, it allows me to add the Golden Castle of Stromberg to my hand. Gylf the Phantom Bird. Golden Castle of Stromberg, spell/field. I'll play the Golden Castle of Stromberg to the field, removing your field card. The area of the arena shifts from the clouds around them, which were sparking with light, to clear away like fog to allow the reveal of a kingdom of gold resting upon the clouds around them. The eyes of the 4 thieves present bulge from the sheer wealth present. Those on the field don't notice they become weaker at the cost of being better defended. Donzalug Dark, Warrior/effect, ATK, 1900, 1400/def, 1100, 1500. Trusty Patches, ATK, 1700, 1200/def, 1400, 1800. Meanie the Thorn, ATK, 1500, 1000, 1400 greater than 1800. I'll use the effect of my castle to summon Hextrude from the deck, as well as summon a second Iron Hans from my hand to the field, which will summon my last Iron Knight, which will increase my Hans's attacks greatly. Hextrude Dark, Spellcaster/effect, ATK, 2600/def, 2100. Iron Hans, ATK, 1200, 2200. Iron Hans, ATK, 1200, 2200. Iron Knight, ATK, 1700 greater than 700. With 2 cards, Leon's field becomes drastically harsher against the thieves. I'll use Hextrude's effect. Once per turn she can destroy 1 card on the field, which allows her to attack twice at the cost of being unable to attack directly. I'll destroy the rightmost face down of yours. He points to a card and Hextrude smirks evilly before waving her hand, which causes a ripple effect to appear over the card's surface before it's pulled up to reveal a trap card of imposing stone walls. Royal Orders, Trap/Continuous. The destroyed card causes Leon some confusion since he knows this is one of the cards he gave Patches with the gold moon coin, but the man has 2 cards in his hand, so he thought they were still in his hand. Bad luck, lad. I had a hunch you were gonna turn it around, so why not throw some decoys out just in case? Leon composes himself. I'll have Hextrude attack trusty Patches. At this both Patches sweat, but the one with cards reacts. Good thing the decoy worked since I hid this. I play Fairy Box. When you declare an attack, I toss a coin. If I call it, your monster's attack becomes 0 until the end of the battle phase. At his words, a large carnival-style box appears. It has holes on the top of it. The thieves scurry and jump into the box to hide. The judge at the side of the arena looks towards Leon, who nods to him. The judge then speaks as he takes out a coin. Patches, your call. Patches shrugged before saying, heads. The coin is tossed into the air and quickly lands on the judge's outstretched hand. He reveals it to be tails. Well, bugger, Patches is heard saying as Hextrude on the field waves her hand and a magical hammer manifests for the box. The box activates, and multiple Patches pop out of the holes. They look similar to the real one, but at one point Hex smirks and the hammer strikes down on the box. The impact zone is visible, and out of one of the holes the real Patches is seen with the hammer hitting him directly. He flops against the edge of the hole rim before becoming pixels. Patches LP, 3500, 2100. Another of Hextrude's effects is that if she destroys a monster by battle, she can increase the attack of a monster on my field by 400. I'll increase my Iron Knight's attack, before going to attack Don Zalug with Hextrude. Iron Knight, ATK, 700, 1100. The judge, hearing Leon's declaration, looks to Patches, who simply says, heads, before flipping the coin. It glitters in the air and lands on his palm again. It's revealed to be heads. This result causes Hextrude to pause as her magical hammer she used before is smashed apart when a cartoon gopher-like creature pops out from the box with a hammer and smashes the magic hammer apart. Everyone is speechless at that, but Leon recomposes himself again quickly. I'll have my first Iron Hans attack Don Zalug, then after that my Iron Knight to attack Meanie. Hearing his words, Patches just says, I'll stick with heads for all my coin flips, judge. The judge nods before starting to do the coin flips. The first results in a head, with the second flip landing on a tails. The pair of iron monsters step up the box and go tackle it to get their foes. Hans, with little patience to the mischief of the box, goes to smash it apart with his axe's hammerhead. This just causes him to swing wildly, missing the fake Don Zalugs that appear. The knight, on the other hand, acts with more patience before punching at the box and hitting Meanie. Remember, kids. Justice is unisex. Using force is okay if they're violent criminals. Meanie becomes pixels like Patches, leaving only Don Zalug in the box. Leon sees this and points at his last Iron Hans, who he directs to go attack Don Zalug. It doesn't take much time, but the coin flip is revealed to be tails. Unlike before with the other Iron Hans, the Iron Hans only swings once at the distracted Don Zalug, who is still processing Meanie's defeat. Patches LP, 2100 greater than 1200. Patches survives the turn, but his field is empty with his only protection being a box. Leon ends his turn, making it's Patches' turn. Due to the rules of the box, he pays 500 LP to keep it on the field. Patches LP, 1200 greater than 700. He draws and looks at the card, and his signature smirk returns to his face, but it's hidden by his cards from Leon's view. Leon, being the smart player he is, speaks up. I use Hextrude's effect to destroy the fairy box. Hextrude takes some sadistic pleasure by waving her hand before the box is ripped apart by magic, destroying the card, but this just causes Patches to start to giggle. His giggling is creepy and disturbing, but it doesn't last long. Okay, that was a bad move, and you will learn why very soon, but first I'll play from my hand the beginning of the end. Having 7 dark monsters in my grave, I can banish 5 of them to draw 3 cards from my deck. Beginning of the end, spell. Refilling his hand, he smiles as he plays another card. I'll play from my hand Creeping Darkness. By banishing 2 dark monsters, it allows me to add a level 4 dark monster to my hand from the deck. He does this and then smirks in full view of Leon. Let the end game begin, kid. Now I reveal my last face down. Return from the different dimension. Return from the different dimension, trap. Patches LP, 700 greater than 350. For the payment of half of my life points, This card allows me to special summon as many of my banished monsters as I want, so welcome bad guys. Above the field, a ripple in space appears like a black hole, and from it, 5 figures appear. Trusty Patches, 4 Don Zalug, 4 Meanie the Thorn, 4 Cliff the Trap Remover, 3 Chick the Yellow, 3. The resurgence of the Band of Thieves refills Patches' field but without Gord the Strong. Patches and Leon know he can't use their combo cards, so Leon is confused. First of all, with the summoning of Trusty Patched, I draw 3 from the bottom of my deck before sending 1 to the graveyard. He does this and discards a spell card Leon gave him ages ago which was useless for him. Now to bring in the big boys. I know you like knights, kid, so my friend gave me a lot of them to share with you. I build the overlay network. At his words, the vortex in the sky grows wider and gains a cloak of stars akin to the night sky. I overlay Don Zalug with Meanie the Thorn to XYZ summon Evil Swarm Thanatos. The pair smile at each other before jumping into the vortex in the sky, and in a shower of lights a new monster is summoned. Their arrival is heard from the sound of a pure white horse galloping onto the field. Its hooves heavy from its owner and rider's crimson armor, surrounded by red floating orbs which orbit the night. Evil Swarm Thanatos Dark, Fiend/XYZ/Effect, ATK, 2350/Def, 1350. I next choose to overlay Cliff and Chick to XYZ summon the Phantom Knights or Break Sword. The pair of thieves shrug on the field before jumping into the vortex. Again the sound of hooves reverberate around, but this time it's a hollow reverberation and not just one set. The source becomes obvious as a pair of ghostly knights appear on the field. Their distinct features are that their horses are just armor, but it pairs with the knight who is a glowing suit of armor housing blue flames. The pair of them flank Thanatos as if guards for a grand VIP. The knights don't have an orb orbiting them, but their orbs are visible where the head of the knight would be, as if acting as the host of the armors. The Phantom Knights of Break Sword Dark, Warrior/XYZ/Effect, ATK, 2000/Def, 1000. Lastly from my hand, I summon another Meanie before building the overlay network again to use Trusty Patches and Meanie to XYZ summon Cairngorgon, Antiluminescent Knight. Meanie appears on his field, but she knows what to do as the pair of them jump into the vortex. It doesn't take long, but this time the vortex doesn't produce a shower of lights but shoots from the vortex like a cannonball is a dark figure who lands in a heavy impact. It gets up from a crouched position with a giant arm in front of it. It moves it out of the way to reveal its form of a knight with golden plumed hair but with rock-like decorations which seem to draw in light and never let it escape once inside. The glowing orbs symbolic of XYZ monsters isn't present but in their place. His should pads seem darker than they should be naturally. Cairngorgon Antiluminescent Knight Dark, Rock/XYZ/Effect, ATK, 2450/Def, 1950. The squad of Dark Knights cause everyone to recoil in shock since, like in Guinevere's Duel, another type of monster summoning is revealed to the world in a most bombastic way. Now that they're all here, I'll start. First of all, I'll activate the effect of Thanatos. By using a XYZ counter, it makes it so they are immune to monster effects for the turn. Thanatos raises his arm to the air and one of his XYZ materials hovers over to his palm. In a ruthless display he grasps hard and crushes it. Once it's crushed and gone, his and his horse's armor glow in blood-red runes warding him from harm. Now that is resolved, I'll use my Phantom Knight's effect, which is that by using one of their XYZ counters I must destroy one card on my field to destroy one of yours. I'll target Thanatos and your golden castle of Stromberg, but since Thanatos is currently immune to monster effects, only your castle will be destroyed. This causes Leon to panic, but he can't do much as on the field one of the Phantom Knights starts to glow grandly as their flames grow in intensity within the armor before spilling onto its greatsword. As the flames lick the greatsword, it gains a series of runes which empower the blade. The strength of the weapon causes the knight to lose control of it and force it to swing it to release the flames. It does so, but in the process doesn't realize Thanatos is in the path of the swing, which erupts a giant blue flame slash. The giant blue flame slash reaches Thanatos, but he and his horse take on an ethereal form which allows the blue flame slash to travel unhindered towards the face of the golden castle. It lands, and with its great heat, everyone watches as the golden castle starts to melt like butter in the sun before becoming pixels. Now with the castle done with, I'll have my knights take out your Iron Knight with my Phantom Knight and have my other knights take out your pair of Iron Hans. The knights charge as a unit with the Phantom taking out the Iron Knight before Thanatos and Cairngorgon destroy the woodsman, the whole process dealing tons of damage to Leon. Leon's LP, 3900-600. Leon's field is now barren except for Hextrude, who luckily has higher hit points than all 3 knights. When he realizes this, he notices he can win the next turn. I thought they would have ended it with that. Maybe my math was off. Meh, I'll just play one card face down and end my turn. Seeing his chance, Leon draws and looks at it. The sight of the card causes him to smile and causes Patches to lose his smirk since he can tell the kid luckily drew a way out. From my hand, I play Gingerbread House, then I'll have Hextrude attack your Phantom Knight. Gingerbread House, spell/continuous. Behind Leon, a house made of sugary concoction springs into existence and Hextrude goes to attack the phantoms by raising her hand, Patches knowing that if this connected, he would lose reaction. I activate Shrink to weaken your Hex, stopping her from defeating my monster. Also, I don't trust that Candy Shack, so I'll use Thanatos' effect to make himself immune to monster effects before using the Phantom Knight to take it out. Shrink, spell/quick play. Hextrude's attack seems to weaken in suspense and power. She stops from attacking by stepping back, but as she retreats, the Phantom Knights charge their second greatsword with their flames before doing another grand blue flame slash that misses Thanatos but slashes into the Candy Cottage, melting it akin to the Golden Butter Castle before. With the destruction of the Candy Condo, Leon's emotions drop, and with his Hextrude unable to attack, he has little he can do so sighs before ending his turn, ready for his defeat. Patches draw and look at his card, then Leon, he gains a contemplative expression before he sighs. I see his expression through the camera and can tell he's annoyed for some reason. It seems I'll be winning then. From my hand, I play the card, Hidden Passage. Hidden Passage, spell/continuous. With this it allows me to send my monster with the least attack to attack directly, so for this, my Phantom Knight will be able to attack directly. At his words, the Phantom Knights raise their swords to the air before galloping off to the side of the arena and ride off out of sight. Everyone is confused for a while, but after a few seconds, the pair of knights appear coming from the other side of the blimp's arena, cresting its edge like they circumnavigated the vehicle to attack Leon. With no way to resist the attack, Leon closes his eyes as the blades of the knights strike down on him for 2000 damage. Leon's LP, 600 greater than 0. Patches wins. Chapter 45, Chapter 43, Human Nature. Watching Patches defeat Leon makes me smile, since even though his deck is powerful, I will admit my real reason for having Patches take him out of the tournament is that it's a very real possibility for someone that young to be hurt if he played against Odeon, Merrick, or Bakura. If any of the guys needed to play some dirty tricks, they have little reservations against using them, and Leon's deck is strong enough to put them in a corner to have them use them. At least that's what I want to say. It's not like I have a hatred against the fairy tale archetype for losing against it at a tournament final in my past life. I wait for Patches to return to the main room, but I'm approached by two individuals, both Rebecca Hawkins and Guinevere, who are giving me the stink eye. I finish eating a mini sandwich and look at them before speaking. What's wrong? Guinevere speaks. How could you give someone sleazy like him some of those cards? Rebecca is silent, but her pout shows her emotions. I turn away from the pair to focus on another mini sandwich. Oh, that? Well, the answer is simple. He might be the personification of the word vagabond, but he and I have known each other for a long, long time. I can trust him to do what's required, even things that would require the dirtying of hands. My response leaves the pair of female duelists silent, but Rebecca is the first to speak. That still doesn't explain how there's a card of him. This catches Guinevere's attention, but I can also tell that Yugi and friends are trying to eavesdrop the conversation, but doing it badly, since they're probably as curious as Rebecca. Now that my dear would be telling the secrets of others, also some things shouldn't be said in public, especially in front of people who would abuse said information. I say this while giving a side-eye look towards Yugi's friend group, especially at a white-haired individual, but Rebecca just takes it as me insinuating her friend would be manipulative and scowls at me. Hey, I don't take kindly to your implication Yugi would be manipulative. Her words cause me to stop eating and smirk slightly. I sometimes forget how naive you are. I turn to her and lock eyes with her. As a free lesson, Rebecca, here is a fundamental fact you should learn. It is human nature to manipulate and shape the world around them to better suit them. It's what creates subjects of interest which drive progress as well as sparking conflict. This makes her knit her brows in annoyance at being talked down to not really believing my lesson. As she makes this face, I sense that Patches has arrived from the elevator and is coming towards us from behind me. If you don't trust me, Rebecca, why don't you ask an experienced figure if good people are manipulative? I say, baiting her to ask Patches, who arrives a few seconds later. Mr. Patches, do people with good intentions act manipulative? She asks, half indignant, half curious about his answer. As I expected, after processing the question for a second, he smirks and says, of course, hell, they're more likely to do so. His direct and no-nonsense answer causes Rebecca and Guinevere to be stunned, but he continues, they usually do so thinking it's for the greater good when it's just as harmful as a morally unjust person's actions. He looks at me with a look. You prompted her to ask me that, didn't you? What was the lesson this time? I return him a smirk. Manipulation is human nature. When he hears this he just nods before grabbing a plate of mini sandwiches. I can't blame him since they're the bomb. Mental note, tip the caterer or chef, whoever Sito is paying for the food. Honestly I can't stop. Rebecca still pouts but everyone's attention is caught by the sphere machine activating and the guard getting ready to reveal the next duelists. This gets everyone to the machine before it starts letting the 6 spheres left in the machine dance. The machine produces the first sphere which the guard collects and looks at it. The guard throws it like those before, but the recipient doesn't catch it with their hand. He catches it with his dirty blonde-haired head before it bounces off and lands in his hand. Joey Wheeler grumbles from the pain before showing everyone the sphere. Its symbol is a pair of dice topped with a jester's crown, and the guard speaks. The first duelist for this round is Joey Wheeler, and their opponent is. The second sphere is produced from the machine and is within the grasp of the guard. He throws it and is caught by probably the most chaotic person present in the tournament. I raise my hand to reveal the sphere in my hand to reveal its symbol as the most elaborate of them all since as I rotate the sphere angle of view for everyone making its symbol change in the light revealing each of the great runes individually depending on the perspective with one view being that of the Elden Ring composed of all great runes besides time and space. Drogon. Can both duelists make their way to the arena? His words cut through the silence. When he finishes, I look towards Yugi and friends who are also looking at me worried for Joey's chances. I see hovering behind Joey and Serenity is the firekeeper in spirit form who bows to me slightly. I close my eyes and bow to her chosen path before turning to Patches and holding out my hand. He doesn't say a word but returns his spirit card to me since I'll need it for the next duel against a duelist renowned for his luck against the odds and stronger opponents. I make my way towards the elevator and give Sito Kaiba a glance to the side. I can see a small smirk on the edge of his lips since he probably enjoyed Joey's symbol which calls out his lucky and jester nature. I go up to the arena and place into my machine my newest deck and get ready for the duel while Joey and his friends arrive. I'm not happy about having to duel the firekeeper but fate plays its hand like that. I look to the sky and notice that the clouds have become denser and roiling like my inner emotions, but I let out a deep breath of air to calm my emotions. Sadly it doesn't affect the actions of the clouds which continue to move freely. I turn my attention as I see Joey step up to the arena and take his place. Before the referee speaks, I talk. Joey, just so you know when I win this duel I won't be taking the Lord of Cinders. I know it's not your card to give so don't worry. This stuns him since he didn't know I knew about his current strongest card. How did you? Never mind it doesn't matter, I'll win this duel so quit dreaming pal. We will see, I respond with a smile before activating my duel disc with him doing so as well. Joey LP 4000. Drogon's LP 4000. Chapter 46, Chapter 44 Moonlit Cinders. Joey's LP 4000. Drogon's LP 4000. The duel starts between the pair, but Joey goes first due to his sphere appearing first in the draw. He draws to his hand, and from it, he summons a monster face down before setting a backline card face down. He quickly indicates to end his turn with this allowing me to draw for my turn. I look at my hand and notice a pair of cards that just cause me to smile. I saw a pair of similar cards before in the other decks, but I never could play them since I never drew them, but here the pair of them are just here to be played. Oh, this will be fun. From my hand I play a pair of spell cards. I play the Great Rune of Magic then the Great Rune of Massachusetts. At my declaration, the air around the arena takes on an increased density as behind me floating as if a tapestry appears a pair of glowing interlocking rings, one blue and one dark bronze with a dark bronze line attached at a point. Great Rune of Magic, spell/continuous. Great Rune of Mass, spell/continuous. When these are played nothing really happens but due to the order they're played in the Great Rune of Magic gains one Elden counter, but I will continue my turn. From my hand I play a monster in face-down defense. This action causes the Great Rune of Mass to gain an Elden counter as well, but with this I end my turn for you to play. The pair of glowing rings give off an intimidating presence, but Joey starts his turn with a draw. He musters his courage and starts. From my hand, I summon to the field Goblin Attack Force in attack position and flip my monster to ATK position before having Goblin Attack Force attack your face down. In a flash of light, a mob of goblins in yellow hard hats appear on the field carrying clubs and the monster card on the field flips over onto the field to reveal an impish, blue-robed warrior with a wing motif carrying a sword and shield. Goblin Attack Force Earth, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 2300/Def, 0. Little Winged Wind, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 1400/Def, 1800. The goblins whip up a rabble of danger before going to attack my face-down monster. As they approach, I simply say, 2 more Elden counters for the Great Rune of Massachusetts. Joey, expecting me to react with some sort of defensive play, is confused as my words and demeanor, but my lack of reaction makes sense when the goblins reach my face down. Well, it's not like a band of ruffians or the Link wannabe can break this champion of the festival. The card faces down on the field, flips up like a trapdoor, and launched like a top is a giant figure of stone and ore. His appearance launches him right into the mob and sends them all flying with his sheer momentum. One of the goblins' clubs even gets sent flying back to hit Joey. Iron Fist Alexander Earth, Warrior / Effect, ATK, 1400 1800 / Def, 3000 2600. Joey's LP, 4000 greater than 3700. The hulking jar on the field brings a smile to my face for getting to fight side by side with a friend again. Joey for his turn realizes he can't continue the attack, so ends his battle phase, which has his mob go have a nap in defense position. When he does this, I speak up. The effect of Iron Fist Alexander activates, increasing his level by 2, which changes his card values. Iron Fist Alexander, ATK, 1800 2000 / Def, 2600 2400. The idea of Alexander becoming stronger doesn't please him, but he can do little to stop it, so he plays it safe. So in his main phase 2 he uses his Little Wingard's effect to return it to the defense position. He does end his turn there, allowing me to go. I draw and look at the card, which causes my grin to extend. It's a reunion of comrades, it seems. From my hand, I discard a card to special summon from my hand Shadow Wolf Blade in attack position. As my words are said and I discard a card, an ear-piercing howl is heard from the night sky before a tall cloaked figure with a greatsword strapped to his back appears within view on the field. Shadow Wolf Blade Dark, Beast Warrior / Effect, ATK, 2000 / Def, 1000. With his appearance 2 things happen. First of all, the Great Rune of Mass gains 1 Elden counter, then Blade's effect activates, which allows me to add 1 of 2 cards to my hand, and I'll pick this one. I speak as I make my choice between a pair of cards depicting iconic locations. From my hand, I play the field card Redmane Castle. This adds an Elden counter due to the Great Rune of Magic. The clouds around us start to take on a maroon hue before visibly starting to thin to reveal the background of the arena has turned to that of a castle perched upon a stone outcropping in the distance behind me. Its appearance draws everyone's attention away from the arena itself, becoming a red sandy dune littered with the weapons of warriors from the Shattering. Redmane Castle, Spell / Field. Welcome to Redmane Castle, the domain of the General Radon. When I play this card, it allows me to add a card to my hand for later, but it also has other effects, some of which you might enjoy. My words cause Joey to be confused, as he usually is, but I continue to explain. I even raise my fingers as I explain so he can follow along. The first effect of Redmane Castle is that we both no longer have a hand size limit. You can have as many cards in your hand as you want. Secondly, monsters are no longer sent to the grave, they are sent to the hand instead. Lastly, once per turn you can special summon a warrior or beast warrior monster from your hand. This does increase the level of the monster by 2, but that most likely doesn't matter to you. I went slow when I was explaining, and I could hear the 2 gears in Joey's head turning, trying to keep up, but outside the arena, Yugi makes a comment about how this makes it so monsters will be battling constantly without restraint. Joey seems to get it, so I continue my turn. Now I'll activate Redmane Castle to special summon the last monster in my hand, Adherent Redmane Freya. At my words the Great Rune of Mass gains 1 counter. Adherent Redmane Freya Fire, Warrior / Effect, ATK, 1800 / Def 1500. Upon the maroon dunes, a summon sign appears and from it manifests a golden armored Valkyrie of the battlefield. She glances around at the surroundings and pauses at the familiar sight. She turns to me, and I nod at her. She nods back before stabbing her sword into the dunes. Now to show you your first challenge, Joey, I build the overlay network. I'll use the level 6 Blade and Freya to XYZ summon the Lord of Redmane Castle. At my words, the pair of warriors look at each other and can tell of each other's strength. A vortex of starlight appears above the arena, beckoning them to beckon a demigod. In the background behind me the Great Rune of Mass starts to burn bright as if on fire. The pair of warriors jump into the vortex and disappear. The vortex seems to stop spinning and sparkling for a moment before a hand is seen grasping at the edge of it and seemingly moving it to the ground, where it forms an archway into an unknowable realm made of still stars. The sound of hoofs stepping upon sand is heard as a creature crest over one of the many maroon dunes. The being in question is a skinny and emancipated horse. It approaches the vortex and lets out a quiet and weak neigh to the vortex. From the vortex the sound of shifting armor is heard before a titan-sized figure seems to step out of it onto the dunes. The sheer size of the man causes everyone present to pause, but everyone watches as he takes a few steps forward before raising his leg and mounting over the weak horse. The titan and his trusty companion turn to face Joey, who is now facing the direct stare of a demigod for the first time. Radon the Starscourge Dark, Warrior/XYZ/Effect, ATK, 3000/Def, 3000. The reveal of Radon's strength values being equal to that of Blue Eyes causes Joey and his friends to go quiet. I also get the feeling Sito, Makuba, Pegasus, Yami, Bakura, Odeon, and Merrick have just realized I'm way more of a threat than they realized. Now for the battle phase. I'll have Alexander take out your little wingard. At my command Alexander flexes his arm and goes to attack the little blue knight. He waddles into melee range before delivering his signature Iron Fist, which destroys the blue knight, but Joey remembers that it just added back to his hand. And with that, I'll end my turn, but before that, Alexander gains 2 levels for winning a battle this turn. As I say this only, I see this, but upon the back of Alexander a large crack in his stony exterior starts to form. Iron Fist Alexander, ATK, 2000-2200/Def, 2400-2200. My declaration catches people off guard since the big scary giant on the field didn't attack, but being the smart one, Yugi realizes that if I send the goblin attack force back to the hand Joey would just summon it again to then defeat Alexander, but currently they are still napping harmlessly. Since I just ended my turn it's now Joey's again. He looks at the card he draws and quickly reveals it to be a Pot of Greed. Pot of Greed, spell, common like candy. He draws more cards with my Great Rune of Magic gaining a counter before he looks at the new additions with interest before speaking. I'll play 2 cards face down and a monster face down before ending my turn. I'm curious about his face downs, but I can easily guess that the face down monster is Little Wingard again. Regardless, I draw a card that I'll need later, but currently it is actively harmful if I play it, so I just continue on with my turn. Knowing there is little point in keeping the goblins on the field, I make a decision. I'll have Radon attack the goblin attack force and Alexander attack the face down. At my words the bulky pair of warriors go to squish their foes. I can see Joey realizes due to Redmane Castle and that I'm not dealing damage, so it's fine to lose some fights for the surprise uppercut later. Too bad, I know I'll be throwing that punch, but my internal ramblings are cut short as the effects of the battle phase happen. First of all, the mass rune gains 1 Elden counter due to the flip summon, and then at the end of the battle phase Alexander gains 2 levels for defeating a monster. Iron Fist Alexander, ATK, 2200-2400/Def, 2200-2000. Yugi, T, Tristan, and Bakura comment on how Alexander's just as strong as Red Ice now, but I tune them out and simply end my turn. Joey draws again, but this time when he looks at the card he gains a smirk on his face. I'll use your Redmane Castle too. Special summon from my hand Guilford the Lightning, and also from my hand I'll equip him with a lightning blade to empower his ATK to 3600 attack points. Guilford the Lightning Light, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 2800-3600/Def, 1400. The sky above the dunes starts to roll with clouds before a small rain of lightning strikes hits against the dunes. They get more intense as time passes, but at a climax, a large bolt strikes Joey's field, revealing an armored knight in a red cloak coated in electric energy. I'll have Guilford take down Radon. Hearing his declaration for battle, Radon raises his pair of great swords which are glowing with purple energy housing his XYZ materials. The general charges towards the lightning warrior astride on Leonard's back. Guilford, sensing the strength of Radon, charges forth to take down the Titan. The great warriors start an epic duel upon the dunes, a battle between a warrior as quick as lightning and a warrior with blows equal to the weight of mountains. With each swing of his blades Radon would rend the dunes, sending ancient weapons scattering in his wake. His opponent embodies his title. His movements are quick and powerful, entering and exiting the guard of the general in between the demigod's strikes. In a dazzling move, in response to one of Radon's great swings, Guilford becomes like live wire and jumps into the air, landing on one of the dislodged and flung weapon remains to jump from one to the other before striking a plunging strike into the chest of the demigod. Guilford jumps back at the blow, leaving his sword in Radon's chest, and Radon in question strikes his swords into the ground as if in support against falling to the ground from the mortal blow, but his pride demands he rides Leonard till his last breath. Good fight, but it's time I show you why Radon is so powerful to be known as the Lord of Redmane Castle. I activate his effect. For the cost of his XYZ materials he can stave off death's grasp before destroying all monsters in front of him. As my words sink in the expression of Joey, his friends, and Guilford pale as the pair of Rodon's swords start to glow with purple energy before the energy is pumped into the ground. In a loud roar from his voice, the gravity around him visibly intensify massively with a purple-tinted energy. In a move similar to his hero Godfrey using his demigod strength causes purple cracks of energy to form in the earth which spread like the cracks in a glass pane towards Joey's field. Guilford, being the agility-based warrior he is, he tries to jump away, but as he attempts to jump, he finds the intensified gravity locks him to the ground, making it so he can't escape. The purple cracks alight with energy and power is run through them, destroying the agility-based warrior, returning to Joey's hand due to Redmane Castle. Rodon picks up his blades, but they no longer glow with energy as before. Also, since there are no monsters left to battle on Joey's field, Alexander gains a level due to their effect, reaching level 11 with 2,500 attack and 1,900 defense. Joey has a look of contemplation before frowning and resummoning his little wingard in defense position to at least mitigate some damage and possibly not die to Rodon's next turn. With that, he ends his turn, the summon adding an Elden counter to the field. I draw with a smile on my face before counting the amount of Elden counters on the great runes. I come to 13. From my hand, I'll play Flask of Cerulean Tears. It allows me to draw 2, then discard 1 card. I draw 2 more cards before smiling. I'll be discarding a monster card, but due to the effect of Redmane Castle it instead sent to my hand, so I don't need to discard. Also next I'll use the effect of the Great Rune of Magic, which just gained an Elden counter due to the spell card played. The ring-like rune changes from its golden natural color to a pale blue hue. By spending 3 Elden counters from the field it allows me to retrieve a spell card from the grave. I'll regain the Flask of Cerulean Tears before playing it and drawing 2 more cards, then discarding a monster which will stay in my hand. Having a broken draw engine like this while having no hand size limit is borderline cheating, but I know I'll have to prepare since I know Joey still has the Dark Souls cards. I do combo 2 more times, so my Elden counter is at 6 and my hand is at 12 cards, but it won't stay like that, since I just drew 2 monsters allowing me to work towards someone special. The only problem, it's I have a better path to progress than that. For now, I'll play the long game since I can tell Joey won't go down easy. I'll have Alexander take down your face down again. Again, Alexander goes forth, and this time he ground pounds card into pixels to reveal a flattened, blue-robed knight, which just returns to Joey's hand. And with that, I'll end my turn. My declaration catches Joey and his friends for a loop. Joey even exclaims, "What are you doing? Why aren't you hitting with the big guy? I'm wide open." I roll my eyes and sigh. Rodon has a demerit for using his extremely powerful board wipe effect. The cost is that he loses the capability to attack directly. Also, I attacked with Alexander so he could reach level 12, to activate his second effect. At my words, the crest upon the top of Alexander's lid glows gold. Alexander lets out a hearty chuckle on the field before walking to stand behind me and crossing his arms, acting akin to a bodyguard. Now he acts as an indestructible continuous spell card which allows me to draw twice per draw phase. To be honest, while you had the powered-up Guilford, Alexander was the bigger threat of the two. You could have taken Rodon the next turn, but Alexander only needed to survive that round to activate the second effect. My explanation causes Joey to visibly grimace at the mistake, but I don't blame him for focusing on the boss instead of the NPC, but he recovers and draws a card which he looks at with some contemplation before continuing. I'll use Redmane Castle to resummon Guilford the Lightning, and for my normal summon I'll summon the Fire Keeper. With his words, the sky again rolls in anger, but unlike before, that isn't the only phenomenon to appear, as on the maroon dunes a swirl of wind is seen coalescing, picking up the discarded remnants of the ancient warriors of the battle into a pile or remains. Guilford appears in a flash of light like before, but he appears with his distinct lightning-clad sword attached to his back. The reason becomes apparent as he reaches for his waist to take out a twisted and ash-covered sword. He takes some heavy steps towards the mound of warrior remains before grabbing the coiled sword with both hands and plunging it into the piles. In a burst of light and sparks, its reaction creates a form of life from the remains of the wasteland, and appearing from it like a specter made of amber fireflies manifests a dark-robed woman wearing a silver crown which also acts as a blindfold. Once on the field, she smiles and bows to everyone politely as introduces herself to the world. The Firekeeper Fire, Saint, Tuner, Effect, ATK, 0/Def, 0. With her, on the field, I'll have her use her effect. It requires a dice roll to allow her to reveal cards equal to the roll and give me one of them before sending the rest to the grave. The referee takes out a die which has glowing edges and markings to make it visible in the arena. He throws it to the center point of the field, and everyone watches the result. It rolls and bounces a few times before landing on a 5. The referee goes to collect the die, and as he walks away the Firekeeper starts to do her magic. The bonfire which is lit on the field starts to glow brightly, and from it, 5 orbs of fire appear from the pyre to hover over the bonfire under her control. The flames then change in form into card shapes before depicting the 5 revealed cards. Insect Queen Earth, Insect/Effect, ATK, 2200/Def, 2200. Jinzo Dark, Machine/Effect, ATK, 2400/Def, 1500. The Legendary Fisherman Water, Warrior/Effect, ATK, 1850/Def, 1600. Time Wizard Light, Spellcaster/Effect, ATK, 500/Def, 400. Red Ice Black Dragon Dark, Dragon/Normal, ATK, 2400/Def, 2000. Seeing the 5 cards, my brain short-circuits for a second. I then start to have a mental laugh at the chances. Each of those cards were those given to him from other duelists, and the funny thing is, due to Redmane Castle, all of them are added to his hand. I'll take Time Wizard. He speaks with a hint of sadness at having to discard his red ice. He goes to discard the other 4 cards, but as he's about to do that, I cough and speak up. They all go to your hand due to Redmane Castle. My words cause him to pause as the 2 brain cells in his head rub together to realize his hand has just been bolstered greatly. Honestly, handing Joey the Dark Souls cards is like handing a Neanderthal a lit torch. I'm honestly curious how he got into the finals, but maybe because this is actually the first time he's using one of them, and Redmane Castle's effect created a unique combo unexpectedly. Joey's hand grows with all of his beast monsters, but he doesn't go to summon them. From my hand, I play Time Wizard to activate his effect. The red circular wizard appears on the field in a flash of light. The wizard waves his wand, and a large roulette wheel is formed in the air before starting to spin. Like a grandfather clock, the sound of its ticking reverberates everywhere. The roulette wheel slows down more and more, alternating between the skull marks and the stopwatch symbols. Everyone watches as the roulette stops at a skull mark on the wheel. Joey seems to grimace before the pointer takes one last step, landing on a stopwatch and glowing to confirm the result. All right, Time Wizard will now accelerate the age of everyone on the field. As he says this, he realizes this might harm the Firekeeper, but I know she'll be fine. The Time Wizard on the field becomes animated as he casts his spell. The clock in its chest starts to spin maddeningly. The forms of Radon and Guilford on the field start to change due to the time. Guilford takes on a more grounded and grand appearance, while Radon's form starts to weaken due to a red miasma that courses through his veins. The Firekeeper remains untouched by the passage of time, but as the Time Wizard finishes his spell, the 3 monsters are now different, each with different names and/or stats. Scarlet Maddened Radon, ATK, 2600/Def, 2600. Guilford the Legend, ATK, 2600/Def, 2000. The Last Firekeeper, ATK, 0/Def, 100. Radon now looks identical to his in-game counterpart, but I'm more interested in the Firekeeper. I look at her and find the only real difference is that her blindfold has been raised to become a full-on crown. This also has revealed her eyes, which are a pair of blue eyes with black sclera. I recognize the eyes as those the ones found in the darkened Firelink Shrine, which are said to belong to the first Firekeeper. Now that our warriors are equal in strength, I'll have Guilford take down Radon. His words catch my attention and make me have to respond quickly as Guilford charges forth to take on his past foe. I'll have to stop that for now. From my hand I reveal and activate the effect of Maiden Darlena. She'll take the hit for Radon. In a flash of light between the greatly aged warriors appears a white-robed woman with her arms spread out, bearing Guilford from attacking Radon. Maiden Darlena Light, Spellcaster, Tuner Effect, ATK, 0/Def, 1000. Her effect makes it so instead of Radon being destroyed, she's removed from play instead. The maiden has a look of solace on her face as Guilford takes his great blade and swings down, bisecting her in half, but with her death, a golden barrier forms around Radon to protect him. Seeing Radon still alive on the field, Joey isn't happy, but he can't do anything else this turn, so he ends his turn, allowing me to start my turn. I draw twice due to Alexander, who I glance at. As it turns out, the Time Wizard affected him as well, making his form calcify and age, but he's still standing proud. I look at the new cards and I smile since I found the card I was looking for. First of all, let it be known a grand festival shall begin. From my hand, I play the Radon Festival. I play a spell card I gained when I played Redmane Castle, and from the castle in the background, a chorus of trumpets is heard, welcoming the celebration. Radon Festival, spell/continuous. I raise my fist forward before extending a finger to count the effects of the festival. The first effect of this card is that it allows me to add a monster to my hand from my deck, then the second effect is the more fun of the two. From our hands we're allowed to summon as many monsters as we wanted to the field as a real monster mash. Lastly, while it and Radon are on the field, no one takes any battle damage. If you would have dealt damage, you're allowed to draw instead. Hearing the effects of the card, Joey and his friends are stunned at such an overwhelming card when paired with Redmane Castle, but Joey quickly comes to and looks at his cards as I retrieve the monster card. I nod to him to signal the monster mash, and as expected of him, Joey summons to his field Jinzo, Insect Queen, and his red ice black dragon. For my field I get to summon up to 4, but from the choices in my hand I summon 3 monsters. Blade reappears, but his companions are unknown to everyone present but myself. Shadow Wolf Blade Dark, Beast Warrior /Effect, ATK, 2000/Def, 1000. Grandsmith IJI Earth, Spellcaster /Effect, ATK, 500/Def, 3000. Preceptor Salivus Water, Spellcaster /Effect, ATK, 2500/Def, 1300. In a single move, I just summon 3 level 6 monsters, each with a value equal to or above 2000. Also, with all the summoning, the Elden counters on the Rune of Mass just bolstered again, with the counter count at 16 this time. It's time to summon her. Now I know I just started the festival, but it's time to welcome the second challenge for you to overcome, Joey. Using my 3 new monsters I build the overlay network. My words cause a new starry vortex to appear in the sky over the red dunes. Unlike Radon's vortex, it stays in the sky, and from it glows a pale blue light which bathes everything in gentle blue hues. The 3 followers of their dear lady proceed to travel to the vortex in different methods. Blade the Juggernaut simply leaps to the vortex before disappearing. Saliva seems to fade in a mode of blue light before appearing and disappearing like a phantom through the air towards the vortex. E.g. acts the simplest. He walks under the vortex and raises his large hammer into the vortex and uses it as an anchor to lift himself and his hefty frame into the vortex. Using these 3 monsters, I XYZ summon the sister of General Radon, Lunar Princess Runni. The vortex starts to shrink in form before a single entity seems to float down from the vortex as weightless as a snowflake in the breeze. The vortex behind her starts to collapse before producing an airwave which makes all clouds in the night sky scatter to reveal the image of the glowing full moon behind her form on the field. She floats towards the ground, and with a wave of her hand a throne of crystal grows from the ground on which she sits upon. A pair of her arms are crossed while her second pair of hands are forming an arch. She peers at the world from beneath her large white hat to reveal her doll-like face and ghostly twin face. Lunar Princess Runni Water, Spellcaster /XYZ/Effect, ATK, 3000/Def, 4500. The reaction to Runni is akin to a stun bomb on the field. Just her sheer presence is like the moon, untouchable and unknowable. Also the fact her defense is high enough to outright block Obelisk the Tormentor with room to spare. With her here I shall continue. From my hand I play Nokron the Eternal City. Runni closes her eyes and waves her arm. From the edge of everyone's eyes a gigantic meteor appears in the night sky and streaks across the sky to strike down on the Redmane Castle in the background. This impact causes a monumental dust cloud to form, obscuring the whole arena. When it fades away, it reveals that the world around us has changed to a mirage-like image of a silver city under twinkling lights. Nokron, the Eternal City, Spell/Ritual. For the cost of sending my field card to the grave, it allows me to ritual summon to the field the Mimic Tear. My words herald the appearance of a pool of silver liquid from the dust of the maroon dunes around us. It doesn't look intimidating in comparison to everything else on the field. You destroyed your overpowered field card to summon a silver puddle right after summoning that witch lady. Let me guess, it's really powerful. His words are cut off as the stats of the Mimic Tear become apparent. Mimic Tear. Dark/Ritual Effect, ATK/Def. The little puddle has no stats, and it confuses Joey, but I explain, well yes, its values aren't amazing right now, but its main effect makes up for that. When it's summoned it allows me to essentially copy any monster on the field, so I'll have it copy Radon's visage. The mention that this card could just copy anything makes everyone pause, but people become amazed as the pool starts to animate and form into a silver-like copy of Radon's form, and all before changing color to become an identical copy of the Star Scourge. Scarlet Maddened Radon, Mimic Tear, Warrior/XYZ/Effect, ATK, 2600/Def, 2600. The strength of my field is daunting, but everyone is curious. Why didn't I copy the Moon Demigod but instead the weakened Radon? But to me my actions always have reasons. Now for the battle phase, I'll have the Mimic Tear take out Guilford, Radon to take out your Jinzo, and Runni to obliterate the Insect Queen. My pair of Radons go on a rampage upon the field, riding Lennox to victory while in the back line. Runny gives a smirk before pointing her hand towards the insect queen. The reaction is instant as she casts a comet as a death laser which just zaps the bug from existence. The battle of the Rodons is more emotive as they go to swing at their opponent like mirrors of each other. The monsters in question try to stop the rampage in different ways. Guilford blocks by using his greatsword to block the strike while Jinzo projects a psychic barrier to block the attack. As expected, trying to use willpower against a man who held the stars at bay while under the effects of Scarlet Rot is pointless as the Titan's swing breaks through the barrier, breaking the form of the monster. On Guilford's side though, he uses his experience and the weakness that he knows he's fighting something akin to a copy of Rodon to take it down. Guilford pivots from the defense of the strike to leap onto the blade of the mimic tier before running along it towards the body. With great agility, even in his older age, he's able to use his greatsword to strike again into the chest of the Rodon. But something he didn't account for is that Rodon is actually extremely smart even in his maddened state, so he uses the mirroring action of the mirror tier to puppet it to keep fighting, which allows it to strike at Guilford when he wasn't expecting it. The mirror tier takes the critical injury, but it raises its other blade and strikes at Guilford. The swordsman goes to dodge the attack, but the mirror tier loses density from the wound, making his escape hampered enough for the mimicked greatsword of Rodon to strike him, turning him to pixels. Due to the Rodon festival, Joey doesn't lose any life points, but I get to draw 2 cards. I'll go to main phase 2, I'll play 3 cards face down and end my turn, but due to red main castle being gone, I'll discard some cards until I have 7 left. It's now Joey's turn and his field now only has the Firekeeper, his prized red ice. He draws up to exactly 7 cards, meaning our hands are equal. I'll activate the Firekeeper's effect. His words are heard by the referee, who goes to roll the die again. The dice are thrown onto the field again and bounce a few times before revealing a 2. The Firekeeper on the field attends to the bonfire, which produces 2 orbs for the revealed cards, which take form to become visible to everyone watching. Monster Reborn, Spell. The Ashen 1 Fire, Warrior / Effect, ATK, 2400/Def, 2000. Seeing the pair of cards he just drew, I have to blink a few times, since out of the many cards in his deck and in a 2-card reveal he gets the Ashen 1 and powerful card. Note to self, find out if Joey has a great rune of luck / probability or something of equivalent value in this universe. If yes, steal it and rule the world. Side note to self, if such an item exists, use it to flex on Sito just for the fun of it. Not acting like an idiot, Joey picks the Monster Reborn to add to hand, allowing him to special summon the Ashen 1 to the field. From the Firekeeper's bonfire a billowing of ash forms around the coiled sword. The ash starts to form into a silhouette which steps out of the flames. The figure's appearance is that of a knight in fluted armor draped in brown cloth adornments, which seems both brand new but rough and frayed on closer inspection. The figure takes a few steps onto the field before kneeling in genuflection to the form of the Firekeeper. She in response extends her hand, allowing the knight to offer their own to her offering. After that, the knight stands before drawing their sword, ready for a fight against a pair of bosses like all those that stood in their path before. From my hand, I'll equip the Ashen 1 with Legendary Sword to increase his ATK and defense by 300. Legendary Sword, Spell / Equip. The Ashen 1 sheathes his sword in its scabbard before approaching the Firekeeper's bonfire. He reaches into the flames before grasping onto something. He slowly extracts his hand from the blaze, and from it in their hand is a rusty and bronze large handle. The more he pulls, the more the sword becomes apparent, its whole body being a rusty and dirty blade full of scars, but the most distinct feature being that its tip is broken and jagged, creating a brutal-looking sword. I recognize the sword. It belonged to an old man who made a promise. Very fitting that the oldest sword of that world would be known as legendary, even if not the most powerful. The Ashen 1 retakes their place on the field before doing the Legion etiquette gesture using the jagged greatsword. The Ashen 1, ATK, 2400/2700/Def, 2000/2300. Seeing that the Ashen 1 has gained enough strength, I have a feeling what he's gonna do next. I'll have the Ashen 1 take out Rodon for good this time. I sigh at this, since Joey's luck got him this. I can't protect Rodon, so I just watch the duel. Another note to self, find the special effects department and give them raises even if Kaiba disapproves. The Ashen 1 steps forward with determined and experienced steps. This isn't the first giant they defeated, but the main difference between Yurm and Rodon is that Rodon's magic power is way denser. They charge towards the fight regardless. Rodon and Leonard charge towards the newest challenger. The sheer mass behind the charge causes the very arena to shake. His swings are powerful and precise, but the Ashen 1 uses their experience to deftly dodge the swings and strike when they can. They even mainly focus on causing large gashes which make Rodon to bleed. It turns into a situation where in the process of the fight, Radon progressively slows down due to the energy loss, being only mobile in the fight due to Leonard carrying him upon his back forward. The critical moment occurs when at one point one of the swings of the Ashen One finally cuts one of his wrists, making him lose his grasp on his great sword. The loss of his sword makes his whole form become unbalanced, making him open himself up with the next swing, which the Ashen One exploits. The Ashen One uses the skill of Gale's greatsword to leap into the air before plunging directly into the skill of the giant. In a final act of defiance, Radon swings his limp arm towards the Ashen One. The large limb meets their helmet and sends it flying, tearing the cloth hood around it. Radon's form fades into pixels with a prideful smile on his face, which fades with his body. The Ashen One is placed on the field unharmed, and they turn towards Joey's field before walking back carrying their blade. Everyone is mostly silent since unexpectedly the face of the Ashen One is revealed to be an exact copy of Serenity. Their hair is cut to fit into the helmet, but everything else is a match for Serenity, who's standing just outside the arena with Joey's other friends all surprised. "Why the hell does she look like my sister?" Joey exclaims to the world at its coincidences, but I have two ideas, one okay and the other which is way, way worse. I just shrug and send Radon's card to the grave, as well as Radon Festival, which has a clause which removes it when Radon is defeated. Arg, I'll sort that out later. For now, I have to duel. I'll activate the Ashen One's effect. I'll remove Insect Queen from my graveyard from play to roll a die to increase their strength. The Ashen One on the field simply reaches into her pouch on her waist to take out what seems to be a golden flame. She holds it aloft in front of her before crushing it and scattering motes of light which float in the air before seeming towards her. The referee takes out the dice again before rolling it. It lands on a 6. The Ashen One, ATK, 2700, 3000. I'm annoyed at this point, but I can't rewind time and change it. Yet. Anyway, Joey knows he can't continue his battle phase. At this point I make a decision. Joey ends his turn, and I draw 2 cards for my draw phase. I activate Runny's effect. By expending an XYZ material, it allows her to remove everything in an entire column from the field. Runny on the field just shows off a smug grin while everyone is processing the damage she can do. I expend 2 of them to remove both columns with your Red Ice and Ashen One. At my command, Runny starts to rise from her throne into the air, weightless like a feather. As she rises, she raises a pair of her 4 hands towards her face. She seems to pinch the air with both hands and pulls away. From her actions, it's revealed that her XYZ materials are the life in the eyes of her puppet body, as the ones in the puppet become gray and lifeless while her spectral face is still vibrant. The puppet pulled out glowing energy orbs before compacting them like snowballs into a bigger snowball before tossing the mass into the air. The orb travels in the air before stopping at a point. Everything is silent before a flurry of energy is heard from the orb as a pair of stars of ruin shoot forth from the orb, peppering everything in 2 rows of the field. The dragon and knight are no match for the witch's spell and are gunned down by the magic spam. The stars of ruin also destroy Joey's backline to reveal a pair of trap cards, Sakuretsu's armor, and fairy box. Joey, watching the knight version of his sister getting gunned down, makes him grimace. He now knows he's defenseless since the Firekeeper can't be targeted for attacks, so he responds to protect himself. From my hand, I play Scapegoat to fill my field. Scapegoat, spell/quick play. With his good timing, he creates 4 tokens that will take some time for Runny to butcher, but I have a plan, but it requires a sacrifice. From my hand, I summon adherent Redmane Freya again to the field before I play from my hand the Fingerslayer Blade. Freya's card appears on the field like a tablet before an archway of light appears where she steps through. Her steps are heavy, and she slowly approaches Runny's side while carrying a black and intimidating dagger which gives off the feeling of being in the presence of ill omen. The Redmane presents the dagger to the princess, who takes it with a delicate touch as if touching something which could break if handled too hard. She raises it to her eye level and a smile that could cause wars to be seen again appears on her face. With no words she moves. She starts to float from her throne. While still wielding the Fingerslayer Blade, she grips the hem of her robe before taking a bow to the field before disappearing into motes of light. Fingerslayer Blade, spell/ritual. At her disappearance, the crystal throne beneath her starts to quake, shaking with the surrounding air. The throne starts to crack and break down as from the sky behind me what seems to be a shooting star seems to be falling towards the field at great speed. This meteor's size scares everyone as it's roughly equal in size to the blimp the arena is on, but I am not deterred. I use the Fingerslayer Blade's second effect. For the sacrifice of a rank 6 or higher XYZ monster, it allows me to summon to the field a Stell, Voidborn Star. The meteor strikes down onto the field, and from it a blast of a deep blue light blinds everyone present. When everyone's sight is returned, they find that the arena now has a roof of glowing blue segments which seem to contain nebulas. Hovering behind me is a gigantic face that can only be described as insectoid, but with a giant blue eye which seems to pierce through everything. Estelle, Voidborn Starlight, Insect, Ritual Effect, ATK, 3500/def, 0. Seeing a monster with more than 3000 attack is less surprising when compared to Runny's 4500 defense, but most are still getting over the shock of it being so big. Now with Estelle on the field, we both have to play a bit more openly. Joey, my words make him look confused, but the meaning becomes apparent as the segments above me and him lower to be right above us, and the nebulas within the segments start to take a card-like forms. We can now both see each other's hands. Seeing the cards he has tells me it is not the worst situation, but I see a few possible problems. For the other effect of Estelle, I see his hand has 2 spell cards, while mine has 3. Not for the battle phase. I'll explain Estelle's effect. When he attacks, I'm allowed to roll 2 6-sided dice, and if it's higher than your monster level, they are destroyed outright. This makes Joey have to think before Yugi of the side of the field speaks out. It means whenever Estelle battles, he could destroy any monster even if he would normally lose the fight. I don't think he would lose most fights with an ATK of 3.5k, but meh. Due to this effect, it means if Estelle would fight your level 1 scapegoat token, it would destroy it due to the effect without the need for a roll, but when Estelle destroys a monster via its effect, it allows him to attack again at the cost of being able to attack directly for the turn. There isn't a limit on the number of attacks he could do, so all of your goats are going to the butcher in a single turn. My words make him realize the problem as Estelle on the field raises one of its skeletal hands before slamming it onto Joey's field before a cascade of energy comes in waves, generating shockwaves which just decimate the cute goats. Now with your field free, I'll have Freya attack you directly. The warrior readies her greatsword before jumping towards Joey and swinging down at him. Joey's LP, 3700, 1900. After the strike, the warrior returns to my field and keeps her blade ready for the fight to continue. After the battle phase, I'll place 3 cards face down, but you know one is a spell and the others are traps, so meh. Once they're down, I'll end my turn. Joey draws before speaking. Just gonna say this reveal deal is more annoying when I don't know what most of your cards do. I retort with a smirk, do you even know what your own cards do? He's silent at that and decides to examine the card he just drew. At it he nods before adding it to his hand. When he does that, I see the card in question and I'm just gonna say at this point his luck is hacks. From my hand, I summon my little wingard in attack position before playing shield and sword to swap the ATK and def of all monsters on the field. Shield and sword, spell. The little wingard arrives on the field again and its eyes bulge out like a cartoon character when it sees Estelle's form essentially wrap the arena. Then the effects of shield and sword activate, and multiple visual effects happen all at once. For the little wingard, its blue tunic/armor takes on a red color. For Freya, she sheathes her greatsword before dual-handing her shield. For the firekeeper, she simply raises her blindfold more until it becomes a full crown upon her head to reveal her eyes. The biggest visual change is that the gigantic form of Estelle seems to enter a molting phase as its many segments seem to dry up and begin to pale, then flake before expanding into what seems to be fur covering its whole body. Little wingard, ATK, 1400 1800/def, 1800 1400. The last firekeeper, ATK, 0 100/def, 100 0. Adherent red mane Freya, ATK, 1800 1500/def, 1500 1800. Estelle, Voidborn Star, ATK, 3500, 0/def, 0 3500. I'll have my little wingard take out your warrior while the firekeeper can take out your big bug. Honestly, I wanted to see how the little knight would fight the Estelle, but I can't control Joey's cards, so the little guard charges to do battle with the female warrior. The fight is less of a duel and more of a situation where Freya has to constantly shield bash towards an opponent who's light enough that it won't cause damage but instead just send them back a bit, even using the shield's Ash of War to deal damage. She can't hold off the wingard for too long before it's able to slip under her guard and get its blade through her armor for the death blow. Freya sighs before letting go of her shield before she becomes pixels. Weirdly, her shield remains, but the little wingard approaches it and picks it up before brandishing it up to the sky. Its own shield seems to disappear and it's now just carrying her shield now, which has magically resized to fit the little wingard. My eyes then turn to the last firekeeper, who all this time has just knelt next to the bonfire staring into the flames. She cups her hands before reaching into it and grabbing a portion of the flame before raising it to the sky. The portion of the flame floats out from her hands towards a portion of Estelle. it hits and Estelle's fur catches fire, spreading rapidly from strand to strand, segment to segment, limb to limb, until the entire form of Estelle is aflame. The giant insect seems to just float there and do nothing while its form burns. This lasts for a while before the sound of cracking is heard, and at that point, the flames start to die down over Estelle's whole form. The flames subside to reveal that Estelle's whole form is now akin to calcified bones and chitin. Its form is intimidating, but another crack is heard a few seconds later. The source becomes obvious when a mandible of Estelle breaks from its form and falls to the arena floor. Its movement forms a trend as more and more cracks are heard before Estelle's form seems to crumble and fall. Once the whole form is on the arena floor, it becomes pixels and disappears. After this, Joey ends his battle phase and then realizes something. "Oh, I forgot to activate the Fire Keeper. I'll activate her effect." The referee rolls in silence. It flies and jumps before landing on a 1. From his face I can tell Joey isn't happy about that. The Firekeeper starts her process before revealing a single card that will go into Joey's hand. When I see it, I just sigh at his luck. Choice of the first flame, trap. At the sight of the card, all of those on Joey's side erupt in smiles, since with this, even if I make a comeback, he can summon his god card next turn and beat me. Too bad, I'll have to snuff that ember of hope out. I haven't been summoning my monsters and using them imperfectly for a reason. I had to run through these cards for one reason. My god card has some bullshit requirements to be summoned, and when the Firekeeper came out I knew it was a race against time until she would pull the Ashen One in the trap, so I knew I needed my own god card to overcome him. I see as Joey places the trap down with a smile, but I speak up. "Since you're about to summon them, I'll have to summon an opponent to meet their mettle. For this, I activate my trap card, Cutting Fate." Cutting Fate, trap. This card allows me to resummon Lunar Princess Runny with this trap and the Fingerslayer Blade as XYZ materials. At the end of my words, the air around the arena starts to thicken and a haze starts to form on the field. The haze on the field starts to dissipate, but from it reveals a scene that is very 18+ content. Sitting in the middle of the field is Runny, but without her flowing and majestic robes. Her form is naked, revealing her doll joints and ligaments made of leather and ceramic. Her whole form is drenched in red blood, and behind her and me is a monument to a great sin she committed. There stands a pair of the two fingers butchered and dead by her hand. Lunar Princess Runny Water, Spellcaster/XYZ/Effect, ATK, 3000/Def, 4500. Her visage isn't the nicest, but everyone notices how she looks listless and unanimated in her seat, which just makes the whole scene more disturbing. Joey, seeing the threat, isn't happy, but he uses his Little Wingard's effect to change it to defense position before coming up with a cunning plan. He speaks. "I was saving this, but now is the time. I'll use Monster Reborn to summon the Ashen One to the field." The Ashen One walks back out of the bonfire before standing on the field again, ready to battle. Seeing the appearance of the knight, he nods before ending his turn, where Little Wingard and Firekeeper's stats return to normal. I draw 2 cards since I made sure that Alexander wasn't hit by Runny's past blast. I look at the pair of cards and smirk. Took some time for the pair of them to appear. From my hand, I'll play my Flask of Cerulean Tears to draw 2, then discard 1 card. Now I draw 2 more and see my deck is getting very thin, but it does not matter since this turn will change everything. I discard a certain monster to the grave before continuing. "I'll use Runny's effect to destroy the columns with your Little Wingard and the Ashen One." At my words, Joey nods before speaking. In response, I activate Choice of the First Flame. Choice of the First Flame, trap. Due to the chain order, Joey's effect goes first, so I just watch as the last Firekeeper on the field walks towards her bonfire before reaching into its base to cup something in between her hands. Her posture is corrected, but now held within her aged but gentle hands is a bright spark-like light which seems to promise everything, but at a cost. I'll use the second effect of the trap to tribute the Firekeeper and the Ashen One to summon the Lord of Cinders. The Firekeeper nods solemnly at Joey's words before the Ashen One starts walking towards the extinguished bonfire before gripping onto the coiled sword. In a quick motion, she takes the sword and takes staggering steps as if the sword is weighed down by all of the world's sins. Its form physically causes a scar to appear on the arena surface, each step becoming harder and harder for the Ashen One as she steps towards her Firekeeper, who holds the first flame in her hands. The Firekeeper turns to her knight and gives the most beautiful of smiles to her champion. The scene becomes silent as in a single moment the Ashen One takes a stance before running the Firekeeper and the first flame through with the coiled sword. The Firekeeper is run through with the coiled sword, still with a loving smile never leaving her face. With her hands now free of the first flame which is slowly lighting up the coiled sword, she raises her hand and caresses it against the Ashen One's face before her form starts to become lightish, flaking away before disappearing, leaving only a silver crown on the arena floor. The Ashen One reaches down before picking up the Firekeeper's crown and placing it upon her helm. Her form is starting to alight in flames, burning away her brown cloth armor and slowly warping her armor in form. It only takes a few seconds for the Ashen One to be consumed and for the Lord of Cinders to take her place on the field. To signal his arrival, in the background of the arena in the night sky appears the bleeding eclipse symbol. Lord of Cinders Fire, God, Fusion, Effect, ATK/Def, 2500. The brutal ritual to summon the god was silence-inducing. Honestly, I wish it wasn't as brutal, but I knew once she held the flame her fate would be sealed to two outcomes: either she blankets the world in darkness or is killed by the Ashen One. I realized it when the card's art has her holding the flame. I'm looking over to Yugi's gang, especially to Bakura, whose face is one of shock at the appearance of a new god card. Well, he and the Egyptian siblings will have to pick their jaws from the floor, since it's not just gonna be one. After the appearance of the Lord of Cinder, the sound of snapping is heard behind me. I turn my head to find out that the corpse of the two fingers has started to collapse onto the field, and both of the limbs are starting to fall over, especially onto the columns with the little wingard and where the Ashen One was. The pair of fingers dissolve into pixels, revealing everything in those columns to have been crushed and destroyed by Runni's effect. Also due to Runni's effect, her ATK and defense are lowered to 2000. Also, the Lord of Cinder's ATK is calculated. Lunar Princess Runni, ATK, 3000, 2000/Def, 4500, 2000. Lord of Cinders, ATK, 3200. Congrats on summoning the god card, Joey. I honestly didn't know if you had it in you to summon one. Maybe that's why people call you the third best duelist in the world. My words come out and both flatter and annoy Joey. Now it's time. It's time to experience the meeting of two gods, Joey. Do you feel the anticipation in the air? From my hand, I play Dark Moon Ring. Dark Moon Ring, spell. I play the card, and it appears on the field in card form. This card requires a Stell in the grave and Runni on the field, but it allows me to special summon my own god card. From the card on the field, a knight in the Raging Wolf armor set appears carrying a bastard sword infused with magic. Their steps are heavy as they approach Runni's form. Once they reach her form, they kneel to her and cusp one of her hands before placing the Dark Moon Ring upon her finger. When it's upon her finger, the doll's form reawakens as if awakened from a deep sleep, and Runni's original outfit forms from magic around her, rejuvenating her. She smiles to the Tarnished before producing, using magic, a great teal greatsword which hums with raw magical power. The Tarnished discards his old weapon before picking up the Dark Moon greatsword and turning towards the Lord of Cinder. Runni, for her part, starts to float before hovering behind the Tarnished and landing on his back, acting like a cloak for her consort, just like Miquella does for Radon. In the sky behind the pair of consorts is the depiction of a full dark moon giving off a gentle glow, encompassing all in a gentle but indifferent blue hue. The appearance of the pair of contrasting celestial phenomena in the sky clash at the center point of the field, causing a battle of blue and red to form in the sky. Moonlit Tarnished Lord Dark, God/XYZ/Effect, ATK/Def. Lunar Princess Runni, ATK, 2000, 3000/Def, 2000, 4500. Most jaws are on the floor from the appearance, but I need to continue speaking. When this god card is summoned, it is allowed to take 4 monsters from my graveyard before adding them to itself as XYZ materials. Another note is that this god card's ATK and defense are equal to the combined ATK and defense of all its materials. I collect 4 monsters from the grave before revealing them. Estelle, Voidborn Star, ATK, 3500/Def, 0. Star Scourge Radon, ATK, 3000/Def, 3000. Shadow Wolf Blade, ATK, 2000/Def, 1000. Trusty Patches, ATK, 1200, 2400/Def, 1800, 3600. The 4 cards are revealed before being placed under my god card, changing its stats. Moonlit Tarnished Lord, ATK, 10900/Def, 7600. I laugh maniacally at my 10k attack god card. I'll be honest, I really wanted to see how high this god card could go, but my laughing stops when I notice something both interesting and intimidating. You would think a god card with over 10k attack would have the largest field presence between 2 god cards, but I notice how the Dark Moon and the Eclipsed Sun haven't changed in dynamics at all, and when I look towards the Lord of Cinders it becomes apparent why. Lord of Cinder, ATK, 3200, 10,600. The sight causes me to pause, since it should be reacting like that. That is until I remember the specific wording of the god card. It gains 200 ATK per all monsters on the field, not just those in a position to attack, meaning it also counts monsters used for XYZ materials as well. When I count the levels of those monsters used for the XYZ materials with the boost from the Moonlit Tarnished Lord, it equals 10,600. What are the chances the God card with the hidden effect to just dunk on XYZ monsters fights an XYZ God card? I blame Joey's luck, but too bad it is not enough. I'll end this duel, Joey. I'll have my God card take down yours. My words herald the battle of gods. The Tarnished Lord brandishes his Dark Moon Greatsword towards the Lord of Cinder, who readies his coiled sword for the clash. The battle starts with the pair of combatants starting by swinging their blades, causing magical slashing of moonlight and fire to be sent towards their opponent, each slash clashing against each other, diffusing each other's powerful slashes. The duel of magical slashes continue for a moment as the pair are very equal in overall power, but sadly it's not a 1v1, it's a 1v2. From her position, Runny raises her hand towards the Lord of Cinder before firing a comet as a beam towards the Lord of Cinder, which forces the Burning Lord to block, using his sword to deflect the beam to the side. It distracts them for a moment, causing the Moonlit Tarnish to take a few steps forward while still swinging magical slashes, applying pressure on the Lord of Cinders. This dynamic continues with Runny interfering in the swing of blade to allow her consort to advance. With each step, the Dark Moon phenomena behind the Tarnished Lord starts to overwhelm the barrier line between the pair of gods phenomena. As the Tarnished Lord reaches Joey's field, their pair of gods finally enter a bout of melee. The Lord of Cinder is the accumulation of uncountable warriors who link the flame battles in a style that can only be described as chaotic adaptability. Each swing of its coiled sword is different from the last, aiming to deal the most damage, and after such a swing the Lord would change its style on a dime to fit its new position, be it offensive or defensive. The Tarnished Lord wields his greatsword with graceful and fluid moments for a weapon of that size. Each swing flows into the next one, applying constant pressure like a cascading waterfall of blows. Whenever the Lord of Cinder tries to make a difference, the Dark Moon Greatsword glows, and from it an arc of grand magical might acts to close the gap between the pair, keeping the pressure, making it too hard for the Lord of Cinder to make any major change. All the while, Runny on the back of her consort uses her magic to funnel away the tremendous heat which the Lord of Cinder is producing. For each swing of the coiled sword causes the Lord of Cinder to burn brighter to overcome the other god, but Runny is making it so the heat doesn't become crippling. The duel lasts for only a minute, but for those watching it feels like an hour has passed as the pair clash swords and magic in an intense display. After a great blow from the Tarnished Lord, the Lord of Cinder staggers back and crouches in a stunned state. Taking the opportunity, the Tarnished Lord and Runny channels their collective powers into the greatsword before thrusting into the chest of the Lord of Cinder. The thrust causes a bright flash of blue light to appear, blinding everyone, but once everyone's vision is returned, it is revealed that a large portion of the Lord of the Cinder's torso is just gone. The ancient being is silent, but even it knows that this is the end of battle, so in a final act it lets go of the coiled sword before reaching the sky, as if in longing before its form starts to decay and collapse. With the fall of the Lord of Cinder, Joey's wide open and I speak, "Now I'll have Runny attack directly for the win." Joey raises his head, forgetting Runny is her entity on the field, still able to attack, so he realizes he's lost as a blue sniper-like beam hits him in the head, dealing the last blow. Joey's LP, 1900 greater than 0. Drogon wins.